I'm here.
Councilmember Kidd? Here. Councilmember Wenham?
Here.
Manager McKee?
Here.
Attorney Dorr?
Here.
Thank you.
Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. All right, pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Don't get a crowd like this very often. Thank you all for coming this evening. We have a number of people signed up to speak during the public comment period, so I will be enforcing the 3-minute rule so we can get to that. We're having a couple of public hearings we need to get to as close to 6:30 as possible. So moving right into the public hearing, comment, Dan Miller. Please give your name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Dan Miller, and I live at 1901 Hamilton Way. Just wanted to make sure that the City Council has considered the ramifications of not funding the Humane Society. My wife and I both work in property management, and one day we came into a house, this has happened several times, and there's an animal left abandoned in a back room. Currently, that would go to the Humane Society now, not involving the law enforcement agencies, et cetera, et cetera. If the Humane Society is defunded, then I suggest that that animal will wind up at the police station as evidence, being abandoned as a crime. And then as I read the RCWs, I think it says that they have to hold that animal for 72 hours if the owner is not known, 96 if the owner is known, and try and track him down before it can be euthanized. And that, I imagine, would be held by a local veterinarian. And so I would ask the council to consider the cost difference between having the police involved, using those man hours, getting the animal to a veterinarian instead of the Humane Society, and take into account that the animal count that you're using right now may not be accurate because the police department and the city doesn't currently see the vast majority of cases where the animal goes straight to the Humane Society. And so I hope you've taken that into consideration and get the numbers from the Humane Society and then take those to a local veterinarian and say, what would it cost us to do this exact same thing? I think the city's getting an extremely good deal now, and I would urge them to fund the Humane Society for the next 2 years as per the contract, and in that time figure out a better way to go about maybe creating a separate segment, find a better way to fund the Humane Society out of the city budget in those 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Price.
Hi, my name is Kathy Price. I live at 1022 East 8th Street. Not only am I a citizen of Port Angeles and an ardent supporter of the Humane Society, but I'm also a corporate officer of Nippon Paper Industries USA. I come here as a private citizen, not as an agent of the company, but it's personally very disheartening to me to see the city blaming its budget woes on our company in the local newspaper at least twice now. The only alternative to our curtailing one paper machine last year was to close down entirely, which would have had an economic impact to the area of about $350 million, according to Washington State's input-output model. I also think that the original impact to the city coffers was around 30% of the exaggerated $900,000 printed in paper. We're working very hard to turn the mill around and diversify our products, and so far this is proving successful. We've already recalled all the operators that were laid off, in addition to some more. MPI Japan has spent millions of dollars in capital investments for business transformation in 2015, and these media comments have a detrimental effect on our business and hence the city. Any potential new customers or employees, having never heard of MPI USA, is going to go to the internet for information. And what are they going to find? They will find articles about our downsizing and layoffs. Worse than that, they'll find articles where the very city we live in and support blames us for their having to reduce funding to after-school programs and now to the Humane Society. I think the city is shooting itself in the foot by making such statements to the media because they thwart economic development. They disenable our ability to attract the talent and the customers that we need. I also think it's a cop-out. An agreement is an agreement. The city's word is only as good as its trustworthiness, which I see decreasing more and more over time due to a variety of issues that I won't go into tonight. If the Humane Society has to curtail their services, it will have other detrimental effects on our community. Most, if not all, of the other rescue organizations on the peninsula are very picky about the animals they will accept, and they do not take all. The Humane Society, on the other hand, takes all animals, and they don't put anything down unless it's dangerous or incurably sick or in pain. Where will these animals go if the Humane Society doesn't have the means to take them? I fear that they will suffer and may even die, especially in the winter months. The existing feral cat problem will worsen and expand to dogs. We all know that dogs run in packs if there's enough of them, and I was attacked by a pack of dogs once. It's absolutely terrifying.
And I need to sum up your remarks, please.
Okay. The city has said that one of the public's main priorities is safety. Standing behind your commitment to OPHS is not only the moral and ethical thing to do, but it does have a large impact on public safety due to the comments I've just made. My own family dog is a rescue from OPHS. Someone decided they didn't want her and tied her to their fence one night. I'd hate to think of her starving or freezing in the cold all alone. I also can't imagine life without her, as she's now a loving member of our family. Due to all the caring people at the Humane Society, please don't reduce their funding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Janelle?
So, Mayor and Council, Jim Hallett. I spend my waking hours at 321 East First Street, and I sleep at night at 1411 South Golf Course Road. I'm here wearing two hats. The first hat is to, on behalf, as president of the Port of Port Angeles Commission, I want to thank the city. This is an overdue thank you for the work that you and your staff put into helping us reclaim airline service, which we hope will begin in March. So I just wanted to extend a personal thank you for that, as well as the work you put in this year to developing our downtown waterfront and making that a much more attractive place. So please accept my thanks on behalf of the port for that. The other hat that I'm wearing tonight is as an individual resident. For 8 years, I sat where the 8 of you are right now, working on a variety of budgets, including during a period of time when we lost our largest employer, Rayonier. And that was a challenging time. We had several budgets we were balancing. We had Plan A, Plan B. I think we probably went down as far as Plan Z if we were really up to it. But so first of all, I fully appreciate the work you do on budgets. We just finished ours at the port, so 8 years of city budgets and 4 years of port budgets. I understand the challenges that you face and the competing interests that face you. I am reminded, however, of Port Angeles Municipal Code. I became very familiar with that in my 8 years on the City Council. And I researched that recently, and in Code Section 7, it talks about animal control, and it specifically calls up the intent of that section is for, among other things, the humane treatment of animals. I believe one of the hallmarks of a great community is how they take care of those that can't speak for themselves, whether it's our children or our animal friends and companions. So that part of the code codifies an essential city service, which is animal welfare. I believe that you all understand this, and I know you have competing interests, but I would urge you to honor that section of the code that our forefathers deemed to be prudent and the hallmark of an excellent city. And I think we can continue to claim a great place to be. Maybe the next poll that comes out will be #1. I think a long way to help in that is, again, how we take care of our animals, and I would urge you to continue to honor that contract and to maintain that essential city service. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Beth Wagner?
Hello, my name is Mary Beth Wagner. I live at 4007 South Tiller Road in Port Angeles. I'm the Executive Director of the Olympic Peninsula Humane Society. and I'm here tonight to encourage the City Council to make the right decision by restoring the OPHS contract. I've had a lot of people tell me lately what a good job we do at the shelter, and I agree with them. We have a dedicated staff committed to improving the lives of animals. We have a strong board of directors committed to the future of OPHS. We have wonderful volunteers who are passionate about animals, and we have incredibly generous donors who want to support what we are doing to make a difference in our community. The letter we received from the city manager in early November states that, and I quote, "Support to external agencies was identified as one of the lower priorities of the city, and as such, funding to the Humane Society will be eliminated." I believe there's a misunderstanding as far as the relationship between the city and OPHS. We are acting as a contractor to the city and providing a service for a fee. We don't receive funding, we receive payment for services rendered. In our agreement, we are clearly identified as a contractor. Additionally, we feel strongly that the City of Port Angeles has indeed breached the contract because the contract reads under modifications. Either party may request changes in the agreement. Any and all agreed modifications shall be in writing, signed by each of the parties. We have not been approached by anyone from the city to discuss modifications to the contract. Instead, we read about the decision to eliminate our agreement in the newspaper, which was followed by the letter from the city manager. I decided to look up the definition of a municipal ordinance for my own clarification. The definition is rules, regulations, and codes enacted into law by local governing bodies. By that definition, the City of PA is intending to violate Title VII of its own city code, which requires the city to operate a shelter or contract with a public or private or nonprofit organization for shelter services. This is clearly stated in Section 7.01.040 of the code. Feel free to review it if you'd like. Although there's not a specific state mandate requiring municipalities to provide animal control, state law does mandate that law enforcement investigate crimes whether they involve people or animals. A cruelty or dog bite investigation would require sheltering the animal until the case is resolved. This is an unavoidable expense. Title 16 in the RCWs relates to animals and livestock and clearly illustrates the requirement to quarantine a dog specifically if it has been declared dangerous. If OPHS is no longer a contractor, the city will need to either build its own shelter or contract with another animal welfare group to care for these animals. I hope there's a clear understanding now that completely restoring the OPHS contract really is the only option for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Donna Helgerson, Househaver.
Good evening. My name is Donna Househaver. I live at 281 Doe Run Road in Sequim, and I'm on the board of directors of the Humane Society. Mr. Mayor and council members, the activities of the Olympic Peninsula Humane Society are critical to animal safety and rehoming. I cannot overstate public insistence that you honor the 3-year contract you signed for our services for 2015 to 2017, and then renew it after that. OPHS cannot absorb humanitarian costs of sheltering abandoned, stray, or released animals from within Port Angeles if you renege on your contract. Reneging will demonstrate publicly your inhumanity to the animals, which likely will just be dumped anywhere within the city with no options as to where to take these wanting and deserving living beings. Animal safety is not just a program to your constituents. Salmon seem to get more attention than pets do, who would share our homes and our hearts. The Olympic Peninsula Humane Society cannot fully serve the citizens of Port Angeles without a fair fee for service. Please honor your commitment to us. Thank you.
Heather Peterson.
Edna Peterson, 217 North Laurel. I'm here as president of Port Angeles Business Association, and after I get through reading their letter as a business owner, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them as a separate tab. This is Port Angeles Business Association, dear City Council members. We are a business organization of approximately 70 members with the purpose of promoting business in the greater Port Angeles area and increasing business growth and developing jobs. Our members have followed with growing concern, the increase in panhandling and aggressive solicitation in Port Angeles and the negative effect this has on our already struggling downtown environment. Panhandling and aggressive solicitation make potential customers uneasy and make shopping in Port Angeles less attractive. They can also create a hostile environment for owners and employees of businesses. This is not a problem limited to Port Angeles. It's our understanding that a significant majority of communities nationwide have already availed themselves of the legal option to prohibit coercive solicitation and limit panhandling as to time and place so that it does not result in intimidation or public safety issues. Many communities in the state of Washington, such as Chehalis and Gray and Arlington, to name only a few, have adopted such ordinance. We recommend that you follow suit. We respectfully request that you pass an ordinance prohibiting solicitation and limiting panhandling as to time and place, as other similar ordinances elsewhere have already done. To avoid reinventing the wheel, one can look at the ordinances such as the City of Chehalis, Ordinance 944B, and adapt it for your local use. Thank you for your consideration and your assistance in making Port Angeles a safe and enjoyable place to shop and go out in. Any questions?
Just a second comment right now.
Okay.
Tom Locke?
Thanks. I'm Tom Locke. I'm the Deputy County Health Officer and a community physician, and I reside in the unincorporated area of the county between here and Swim. And this is my last chance to address the council this year. I'm going to be out of town during your next meeting. And I'd like to touch just briefly on three things. The first is I hope we have been able to honor the assignment that you gave to us, and me in particular, several months ago when you asked us to coordinate hearings in October, and you heard from a wide range of experts. The next week from dentists and physicians and many community members. And soon you'll get the results of your public opinion poll, and I hope you consider all of this information when you're making your decision. The second point I would like to bring to the council's attention is something that's very important to me as a career public health physician, and that is the notion of duties of government. The way I was taught, and the way I've come to believe, is that government doesn't exist for its own sake. It exists specifically to carry out these fundamental duties to protect and promote health, safety, and welfare. That's where all of our authority, all of our legitimacy comes from. And this applies to all units of government, and specifically all units of government have public health duties. For the city of Port Angeles, one of your chief duties is to manage the municipal public water system and do so in a way that protects and promotes public health. And the decision to institute community water fluoridation over a decade ago was an exercise of this duty, and I think a very important one. And likewise, any decision to reverse this public health decision of the past, I would look at as a reversal of that duty, and a very unfortunate one. And the reason is that, and I hope we've made this case to you, that community water fluoridation has very real benefits. The science takes away those benefits. It causes harm. And to us, especially practicing dentists and physicians, This harm is not a statistical thing. It has a name, it has a face. We treat it every day, and it's tragic when we lose the opportunity to prevent something as serious as oral health disease.
Dr. Lundgren, some of the directions.
Okay, thank you. And then my only final point is to consider legacy. Like it or not, this decision is something that the council will very much be remembered for, and I hope you take that into account during your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you. Last name is Engel.
My name is Yuleia Engel. I reside at 505 West 11th Street in Port Angeles. I've lived in Port Angeles for almost 3 years. During that time, I've done a lot of growth personally, and I've obtained 1 AA, and now I'm pursuing my bachelor's. I work part-time in the service industry. I play in a local band. I'm a musician, an artist, and a good student, and trust me, I don't maintain a 3.7 GPA because I failed to do my research. I was born in Louisiana. I traveled all over the country, and I ended up here not only because of serendipity, but because of the beauty of the landscape, and I was inspired by the community for having the first and largest and most successful dam removal project in the world. The L wall also reminds me that humans do have the capability of making the right decisions. And I assumed, since this was a community that fights for clean and free water, that fluoridation would not be an issue here. I assume wrong, and I balk at the hypocrisy in this. Now, because I am an artist, when I see something, I don't see it for what it is. I see it for what it could be. I don't see Port Angeles as a drug-infested town with high crime rates and low unemployment. I see Port Angeles as an artistic and open-minded community with the propensity to be a great example of what can be achieved economically and socially when we are open and fluid with the ebb and flow of humanity's evolution. The world is changing, and we're at a crux right now when we have to decide if we're going to keep going in the direction we've always gone in or do something completely different. Both of these options are going to create some initial discomfort, but only one will result in things getting better and brighter. If we do nothing in our resistance to change, we are going to die a slow, painful death. If we embrace the changes and embrace diversity, both in the ecological systems, opinion, and the cultures around us, then we can and will experience the rebirth of the American dream. For too long, we've created systems that cater to the few and create a monoculture by catering to the lowest common denominators in society. Television program, Common Core education, fluoridation programs, and a culture based on unchecked consumptions have not raised society to a new level of thinking and understanding. Instead, we see infrastructure collapsing. Many of my friends have died at a young age due to substance-related abuse. Our education systems are failing far behind other countries, and our public health system has been geared towards only focusing on the symptoms while the actual diseases fester and grow more devastating. My generation is apathetic, and why wouldn't we be? We live in a society that embraces a monoculture instead of individual autonomy and human diversity. How is it that so many of us has fallen so out of touch with reality that we think walking slower towards the cliff's edge is going to make the cliff disappear? The pro-fluoride lobby is out of touch. They're surrounded in the reinforced bubble that is their work environment. And let me say here, I love science, I love technology. When I'm 60, I hope I'm able to start seeing a world where an educated youth is interested not in drug use, but understanding particle physics. I'm not blasting modern medicine, I'm blasting how our doctors have been turned into glorified salespeople for the pharmaceutical companies. Continuing the failing fluoridation practice is going to stifle Port Angeles' growth, financially and socially. I know that the Olympic Medical Center, yes sir, is a big business around here that holds a lot of bargaining power, but let's make room for an economy not based around being sick. You want to attract open-minded and solution-based businesses in water fluoridation. We have a huge agriculture and natural resource-based economy and could have an expanding one. People all over the country are fighting this public health catastrophe. Ending fluoridation is going to be a highly positive, free advertisement for how cool the city is worldwide. I hope you see that this is not going to hold us back by any means. And I just want to say, if you do continue this, I'm going to sit right there and you're going to have to escort me out in handcuffs, and I hope that breaks your heart. I hope it breaks your heart because not because of the inconvenience it poses to you, but until people start to wake up and look beyond the symptoms to find real solutions to the problem we face, I don't have a future, and I have nothing to lose. Thank you.
Alice Lorraine?
Hello, my name is Dallas Lorraine, and I live at 1818 West 5th here in Port Angeles. I just retired about 3 months ago, moved here about 2.5 months ago. I received an email from the Humane Society describing what is going on, and I just felt that it was very important for me to be here. I myself have adopted many animals from various shelters from the Seattle area, and I just think it's very, very important that animals have some place to feel safe and loved in the interim of their circumstances and their forever homes. And because they don't understand why they're in the circumstances that they are in. So I think it's important that we continue funding or contracting, I just found that out a little bit ago, financially for the Humane Society, because animals are just as important as humans in my eyes. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Back?
Well, I actually just circled, I'm here to support the Humane Society, but I actually circled no, that I wasn't going to.
I'm sorry, okay. Sonia Wade? How about Penny Anderson?
Hi, Betty Anderson, 118 Motor Avenue. I'm here in support of the Olympic Humane Society too. When you go home at night and you look at your fur babies, okay? Occasionally things happen in your life, circumstances not expected. People die, people wind up in nursing homes. I mean, things happen in life. There is a place for your pet to go, and that's the Humane Society, because they take these animals in. I've been a taxpayer of Port Angeles for over 38 years. The only thing I ask is that I spend over $2,000 a year on my city taxes. Take the first $2 of my money and just give it to the Humane Society, okay? The rest you can spend any way that you need to spend, but just take my first $2 and give it to the Humane Society. Thank you.
Kathy Iredale?
Hi, I'm Kathy Ariel. I live at 1614 East 3rd Street. This is my first time. I moved here in 1988 because my husband had family here. The only reason I agreed is because my son's neurology doctor said that since my son had just undergone a hemispherectomy and would be disabled, if we were to move from La Jolla, California, this is the only town that is better at protecting those that cannot protect themselves. I was amazed that this man even knew of the town of Port Angeles, Washington. Okay. I would hate for that distinction be blemished because we have decided not to help those that cannot help themselves. And what will happen to those animals? This is what I'm talking about, animals. Because animal research, because that still exists. I would hate for this town to be blemished when all the way in La Jolla, California, they know that we are a town that cares about those that cannot take care of themselves. Thank you. And I am against fluoridation in our water.
Good girl.
Fareed, is it? Fareed. Fareed?
Yeah.
With a name like Drew,
It's commonly my name's Kurt Fareed. My address is 3215 Northeast U.S. Grant Place, Portland, Oregon. Mayor DeJulio, member of the City Council, I'm a retired dentist from Portland. I currently volunteer my time as the board president and dental director for the nonprofit Creston Children's Dental Clinic in Portland. And I also sit on the Medical Teams International Dental Advisory Council. I am the chair of the Oral Health section of the Oral Public Health Association. I am also co-founder of the American Fluoridation Society, a group dedicated to the education, promotion, and preservation of fluoridation in the United States. I've traveled to Port Angeles this evening to speak to you for two reasons. Number one, I'm particularly fond of your fine city. My brother Thad married a PA girl, lived here for 12 years till his job took him back to California. And I've spent many Memorial Day weekends, some right in this chamber here, enjoying with my brother, wife, and daughter the Wanda Fuca Music and Arts Festival, second to none as far as I'm concerned. The second reason I've come here this evening is that I personally have little tolerance for the false statements, the unsubstantiated claims, and the misrepresentation of science by the opponents of fluoridation. Over the last 5 years, I've assisted 12 fluoridated communities, 7 in the Pacific Northwest, fight off rollback attempts by the opponents to fluoridation. Now, part of the reason I've been successful is the very fact that when a community has experienced fluoridation for several years, the fear-mongering of the opponents doesn't resonate. Port Angeles has experienced fluoridation for 10 years, and none of the allegations aimed to create fear and doubt has occurred. PA's medical, dental, and public health community, led by Dr. Tom Locke, have come together in support for the continued fluoridation of your public water system. They understand that the overwhelming scientific consensus agrees that fluoridation is safe and effective. I've heard many opponents state that they don't want fluoride in the water because of personal choice. I am just as big an advocate for personal freedom of choice as the next person. But in the real world, the need needs to be balanced against social good. To dogmatically stress one at the cost of the other is just political extremism. Most people accept that social health benefits the whole community financially and ethically. Fluoridation is about social justice. In closing, I'd like to share a quote by the late Hubert H. Humphrey on the role of government. It was once said that the moral test of government is how that government treats those who are in the dawn of life, the children, those who are in the twilight of life, the elderly, and those who are in the shadows of life, the sick, the needy, and the handicapped. I urge you to do the right thing and vote yes to continue fluoridation in your fine community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carol?
Carol Johnson, 123 Henry Boyd Road in Port Angeles. I'm also a member of the Board of Directors of the Olympic Peninsula Humane Society. The Humane Society does operate as a nonprofit, but we operate just like any small business with revenue and expenses. We hope that you will honor the city contract to the Humane Society so that we can maintain good programs for animals and people and meet the needs of not only Port Angeles, but the Clallam County. We are making a significant investment in the community with our new shelter, and that's going to greatly improve the living conditions for the animals that we take in and give us new opportunities with larger animals, which we have not been able to do in the past because of our current location. That is going to improve not only the lives of the animals, but also the working conditions for the staff and the many volunteers that spend countless hours helping defray the extreme cost of taking care of these animals in need. Your contract is a significant amount of income and revenue to the Humane Society, while the amount that the city pays is a very small part of your overall budget. So we hope that you will consider honoring that contract for the next 2 years and working for a future and a long-term services contract so that we can continue the work that is never going to go away given the social issues that we have in our community and the constant need of animals that cannot help themselves or speak for themselves, and they certainly are a significant part of not only quality of life for citizens, but also as a health issue, taking care of the animals that may become dangerous, sick, and otherwise endanger other people and other people's animals. So we hope you will continue to work with us and you will honor our contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Tangle.
My name is Carol Tangwell, and I am new to the Olympic Peninsula, less than a year residence. I live at 123 Canyon Estates Drive in Sequim, and I'm here to support the Olympic Humane Society. I had an experience with them this past September. My son and I found a dog running on a logging road. Can't tell you what road. I was kind of lost, but I knew this dog, if we didn't catch him, he wouldn't survive out on that logging road. He was older, in poor shape. He was wet, dirty, and muddy. I took him home to my house on a late Friday afternoon. The Humane Society was closed at that point for the weekend, and there was a holiday that Monday. So this dog resided with me over the weekend and through Monday till I could get him to the Humane Society on Tuesday. My concern here is in investigating and Googling Port Angeles, Washington animal shelters. The pet posse listed has on their site that we hope someone will volunteer who can provide foster care when a pet is found. The Peninsula Friend of Animals, they on their website say a small dog foster adoption program in place with one person coordinating it, small dogs. Also on their website, they say that on-site dogs require much more space and care than we can provide. I have 3 German Shorthair Pointers, bigger dogs, one that I adopted from Paws in Linwood that was deemed difficult to adopt, that's now being considered for some therapy dog training. I'm not sure what these dogs are supposed to do. I'm not sure what larger animals are supposed to do. I have a daughter-in-law in Port Angeles that has cats and a dog. If they got out, I'm not sure where these animals go. And I think you really need to consider your funding for Olympic Peninsula Humane Society. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jess, great.
I'm Jess Bradle, and I live at 1117 South Nevada Street. It's ironic that Portland is represented here tonight since fluoridation failed in Portland. Fluoridation of our water is not the choice of Delta Dental. It is not the choice of Washington Dental Service Foundation. It is not the choice of our doctors and dentists, and it is not your choice. But the decision to continue fluoridation contract is yours. You were elected to keep our welfare and best interests foremost when making council decisions. You were elected to decide what is best for us, not to think that you know what is best for us. To think of us, not to think for us. I know my body and teeth better than Delta Dental, Washington Dental Service Foundation, my doctor, my dentist, and you council members. So please, do not harm me with fluoridation. I believe there is inherent liability for the city if you decide to continue fluoridation. I have spoken with enough of the electorate to speak knowledgeably that many folks are harmed by fluoridation. There is fluorosis in Port Angeles. It is easy to detect, but it's not easy on the wallet to treat. Actions have consequences. I also speak knowledgeably that inherent liability is but a dog bite away if you end the contractual funding of the Humane Society. An unleashed pit bull bit my miniature schnauzer on the waterfront trail last summer. by the grace of God, a human was what is inconsequential. Actions have consequences. Thank you.
Good. Todd Earler?
I'll pass.
No pass? Okay. Alan Beat?
This is Alan Peet, 902 East 8th Street. At council meeting at the beginning, you asked for studies and things like that, and you've been provided with many of those. Tonight, I'd like to share one that will help show you the need, the benefit, and help with your duty as a public health official. This study was done on water fluoridation, showing that it's key to lowering hospitalization rates related to dental infections. And if you remember when I spoke last time, I spoke about a child and his hospitalization from a dental infection. And the objective was to investigate the association between adequate public drinking water fluoridation and hospital rates for serious dental infections in children and adolescents. And there were compared cities that had adequate water fluoridation with those that did not, and they looked at the infection rates, hospitalization rates for children and adolescents. And this was done in a study in the Journal of the American Dental Association, March of this year. And they looked at 38 cities from January 2005 to December of 2011. And there were 1,413 related hospitalizations during that time in these cities for serious dental infections in children. Cities with higher fluoride concentrations were found to have significantly lower odontogenic infections-related hospitalization rates. And they also looked at the cities based on their socioeconomic status, high, medium, and low socioeconomic status. There was a large difference in hospitalization rates was noted in the low and middle income socioeconomic group related cities to the presence or absence of optimally fluoridated water. So those in the lower socioeconomic groups had higher rates of serious odontogenic infections. However, in the higher socioeconomic levels, no significant difference in hospitalization rates was noted. So the conclusions of this study was that there was an association between adequate public health water fluoridation and dental infection-related hospitalizations in individuals aged 18 years and younger. This effect was most prominent in the lower socioeconomic group. Dental disease is an epidemic, and that in my profession, we can't seal it, drill it, fill it, or pull it and cure it. The only way out of it, that's not the way out of it. We need to try to prevent it. We frequently, in my part of the dental infection, see the end product, the serious dental infections that can become life-threatening. And that can happen in individuals in all age groups. Community water fluoridation is without question one of the most valuable public health measures available in reducing the incidence of dental decay. And it doesn't require any change in the individual habits. And I think that's what this study clearly shows, especially when you look at the difference between the higher and lower socioeconomic groups. So I appreciate the opportunities that you've given both sides of the members of this community to voice their opinions. And I know that the dental community will support your decision, whatever it is. And I think that it's important for us that you have given the community this opportunity for their voices to be heard. And we will support whatever decision that you make. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy Coghill?
Hello, my name is Sandy Cardell. I live at 1329 West 10th Street, Port Angeles. That's all. This is my first time doing this.
I feel it is crucial for that the city of Port Angeles keeps a commitment of funds to the Humane Society that is in the best interest of our city. Our police and fire department are already overwhelmed with city emergencies, and they do not meet the extra burden of animals, of which are maybe violent, sick, found on the road dead, and need to be removed. And the overpopulation from less spaying and neutering that will happen if animals have no place to go. They will just multiply and become sick and run in packs. I feel the city of Port Angeles is a compassionate city when it comes to our people and the voiceless, our four-legged friends. We need to continue with this and show the world we care and that we as a town can make the world a better place. I think it was proven on that Facebook thing even, we were in the running. I mean, I love this town. Let's be a voice for our voiceless, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Kennedy?
Hi, I'm Dr. Scott Kennedy, and I'm living at 136 Old Black Diamond Road, Port Angeles. I'm a family physician by training and serve as the Chief Medical Officer at Olympic Medical Center, also a father of 5 children. Mayor DiGiulio and council members, as a council, you agreed on a process to evaluate fluoridation and make a decision for the future benefit of Port Angeles residents. Initially, we were concerned that this process would take away from the public health discussion needed to truly understand fluoridation. But I feel confident now that because of the work of these past few months, we truly have had an opportunity to look carefully at fluoridation as an issue. We've tried to show very deep support for community water fluoridation. The majority of those who spoke testified to the council during the public hearing were in support of fluoridation. You can see the visible support of the community with signs in some of the yards and signs on cars and even signs walking up and down the streets at times showing support for community water fluoridation and trying to speak to those benefits. So many people have written letters to the editor, to the Peninsula Daily News, and I know many of those that have been written have not yet been printed. We worked hard to provide you with enough information to make a good decision. During the forum on fluoridation, presenters provided accurate and up-to-date information. The presenters were local and could speak to the realities of Port Angeles. We also provided you with stacks of written information and studies that support fluoridation, and I believe you received letters from some of the leadership of national organizations in the dental and medical world from around the United States. We appreciate that. During this process, I've heard from the health community, from physicians and dentists that practice in Port Angeles, who roundly support community fluoridation. You've heard more of that tonight. I hope this gives you peace of mind. I really encourage you to speak with your own dentist or your own doctor that actually takes care of you and the one that you trust with your family's health. We are nearly through with this process, and we appreciate the process. I hope that you are confident of both the benefits and also the safety of community water fluoridation with its 70-year track record. As representatives, you're elected to make the tough decisions on behalf of everyone, even those who do not yet have the right to vote. As you consider the survey results that are coming in the next few weeks, as you consider those, please keep in mind that our children did not have the opportunity to fill out a survey, but they would be the ones who would be most harmed by a reversal of fluoridation in our community. Fluoridation is cost-effective, it's beneficial on many levels, it's safe with a long track record and well recognized as a cornerstone public health measure for decreasing tooth decay. We appreciate having fluoridation currently and really don't want to see this progress reversed. So please continue to support oral health for our community by tabling any move to take away fluoridation from Port Angeles. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Eloise Taylor?
Good evening. I'm speaking, of course, from a different point of view. Dental examinations for a 2005 county trial survey were carried out on 828 and 9-year-old children in Clallam County. It was carried out by a county hired technician. The results confirmed that community water fluoridation does not decrease and appears even to increase dental cavities. The observations are confirmed even when analyzed looking at those most vulnerable, those participating in free and reduced lunch program. The comparisons of average numbers of cavities in children living in fluoridated areas with those living in non-fluoridated areas were statistically significant beyond the scatter expected in any sampling variation at a confidence level of 95%. The best national studies of this type, Burnell and Carlos, dealing with almost 40,000 children sampled, showed a possible improvement in cavities of only 0.6 of a 1/2 surface. And that is a possible 127 surfaces. And this result, found in 1995, reported in 1995, was not statistically significant. Based on a new discovery of earlier correspondence, we now know that the county health officials were aware, even before contracts were signed to start this activity, that fluoridation was not working to prevent cavities in force. If you look at the exhibit, which is the second page that was just handed out to you, you will see that in March of 2003, the county health officer and other officials were told by the county's dental technician, Cindy Newman, that, quote, young children in forks where fluoridation has gone on for almost 50 years are more subject to dental decay than children living in non-fluoridated Port Angeles and Swim, unquote. Unfortunately, this evidence was ignored. In the political campaign just concluded, we note false claims of efficacy based on non-existent data for preschool children in the SMILE survey of 2005. We note advocates failure to name one up-to-date controlled study showing efficacy. I'll be real interested to see that paper that Dr. Pete just told us about. I'll be in tomorrow looking for it. We note advocates failure to name one up-to-date controlled study showing efficacy. A submission was given by Dr. Kennedy to the council with references from Surgeon General Murphy. That, the references that he gives, don't fulfill the imputed goal. Dr. Murphy offers no qualified references either, and the limitations of the Burnell and Carlos study, which are listed in his reference in a very vague way, were obscured. When I went to get the basic reference that he gave, it turned out to be simply a summary that was written, obviously, by the Centers for Disease Control. In other words, he doesn't have the meat in the burger. Our reports on efficacy, as revealed by data from Clallam County surveys, are the best to be had, and they do not support continuation of fluoridation. I have given you a lot of statistical stuff I'm not going to read. You'll be probably relieved to hear that. But we will be discussing this matter a little bit further. We have even more to go as we explore material which has been held away from public view for far too long. Thank you.
Okay. Jesse Farmer.
My name is Jesse Farmer. I live at 4218 Mount Angeles Road. I'm from Port Angeles. I've been here my whole life. I grew up without a lot of fluoridation to keep my real good. I'd like to talk about harm and your legacy. There's a lot of studies about efficacy. You can see the entire public health community, along with their corporate sponsors, are all interested in promoting fluoridation. The reasons for that don't matter. That should be clear to you. You've sat here and heard professional after professional, paid shills, people that are trying to advance their career pushing for water fluoridation, whereas the people against it are just regular folks that don't want to drink toxic waste from a phosphate fertilizer plant in Wyoming. So, there's no way I can prove efficacy one way or another, but I can say, as you know, many countries in Western Europe have comparable or much better rates of lower rates, therefore, of tooth decay, and something like 6 or 8 or 10 don't fluoridate at all. They don't add fluoride to the water or the salt, and they're trouncing America in these terms. Now, tooth decay rates are very low among the Western world. That trend's been happening since basically the New Deal, and water fluoridation doesn't seem to mitigate that one way or another, really. But I would like to talk about your legacy. The legacy of Tom Locke in the last 60 years or so, water fluoridation, is a 40% rate of dental fluorosis among American young people currently. That's among all American young people. That's not just fluoridated communities. That's unfluoridated, fluoridated, fluoridated at the older, higher rate, fluoridated at the lower rate, or whatever rate this or that municipality is selected at the time. So we don't know what the rate is locally, and they're not doing a very good job, or they're not trying very hard to study it, obviously. The people that just don't want to drink toxic waste can't afford to study it. We're not getting grants. But the rate's high. It's real high. And you heard dentists come up here and tell you they're seeing more fluorosis. So the question comes up, and fluorosis is deformity caused by fluoride. There's no question about that. So if the question comes up, did you know you were doing harm? The answer has to be yes if you vote for this. They told you, I told you, the CDC's told you, local dentists have told you. Now they want to say it's cosmetic, to which my head explodes. The idea that you could hurt kids, but as long as it's just cosmetic, that's insane. I don't know who would really make that argument, but that is their argument. They have no other argument. They have admitted to doing harm. They're just saying it's cosmetic. As if that's okay, moving along. It's not just cosmetic, it's systemic. This is happening to the bones, this is happening to other tissues. This is not being studied. And the same public health officials that are tasked to study this are the same ones that are saying, well, there's no proof, there's no proof. That's all they're falling back on. They're using the old tobacco, asbestos, lead, DDT, Agent Orange argument. There's no proof. Well, these are the actual individuals that are opting not to look for proof. And once you get that far along, it's pretty insane. But the bottom line is, you are doing harm. You're doing harm to the entire system. You also have about 1 in 25, or 1 kid in every classroom nationwide with unknown rates among populations that fluoridate as we are, but high. About 1 in every classroom with serious damage. The cure for serious damage to teeth caused by fluoride is...
Sum up your remarks, please.
I will. Okay, thank you. Ripping the teeth out and replacing them. Obviously, there's nothing you can do for the bones, and obviously, there's nothing you can do for other tissues. So again, you know you are doing harm. You don't know if you're doing any good. It's highly dubious whether you're doing good or not. You know you're doing harm. You were told by me, you were told by the dentist, you were told by the CDC, and I don't think it's the duty of government to do harm, and I don't think you're going to be able to fall back on the it's just cosmetic argument. If that's arguments, demonic, I don't know, it's evil, it's terrible. Please stop hurting children.
Thank you. Okay, gentlemen, I would ask the people who have not signed up to come up to speak. We're way past the 6:30 start for the public hearing. The council has asked for about a 5-minute break, so we'll take a 5-minute break. It is the public hearing on the 2016 budget. So we'll turn over to Larry. You'll do this, or Sherry will do this.
Mayor, I'll take this one, and then Sherry will do the 2015 budget. Just a few brief comments. We don't have a formal presentation. Following the first reading of the ordinance 2 weeks ago, council directed that staff bring back some options that would provide restoration of full funding to the Humane Society. That was the only request from council. So we've done so in the memo. We've analyzed 3 potential options for the funding. We are recommending that if council wants to restore full funding, that it look at what we call option number 3, which is where we use some REIT money to backfill, to free up some general fund money. There was one question that council has raised in the interim was, where will we be as a city with the general fund unappropriated fund balance? My expectation is that once we finally close out 2015, which will be sometime in late March, that we probably will see fund balance at or very close to the 25% level, which is what is required by council in our long-range financial policies. If you recall that currently we are, in 2015, we are planning on using $402,000 worth of reserves. We hope that that will not be necessary, but we'll have to wait and see where the last 2 months of the year end up. And we will actually be paying bills for 2015 all the way through into 2016, so I can't give you an exact figure at this time. But with that, if council wants to provide restoration of funding, council will need to amend the proposed budget that was read at the first reading, and I've given you a proposed budget amendment language in motion, and then once, if council does approve that, then the next motion would be to adopt the 2016 budget as amended. If there are questions, I'd be glad to answer it, or Sherry's also available, or any of the other staff here.
Okay, any questions before we open the public hearing?
I thought our long-range policy indicated we shouldn't use REIT funds for something that's not a one-time capital expenditure.
The proposed use of the REIT funds would be as part of a grant match for the what's called a flap grant, which would provide access to the national park. So it would be a one-time use of those monies as a one-time grant. So it does fall in line with those requirements that council adopted.
So it would fund the Humane Society?
No, what it would do would be free up general fund dollars, and those general fund dollars council could direct for 2016. Just to remind everybody that we're only dealing with the 2016 budget, not future budgets.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll open up the public hearing. Either for or against the budget. Just come to the microphone, Peter. All right, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I'd actually like, if I could ask, that we identify topics to be discussed under the proposed budget. Myself, I have actually 3 different items I'd like to discuss with council, with the public here, before we actually get to a process of figuring out this proposal going forward.
I think you can raise those issues during the discussion.
All right, thank you.
Peter?
Peter Ripley, 114 East 60, 102. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. 2 items that during the course of the evening have come to my mind. One was one that we're talking about is, well, it's great that we were considering funding for our furry friends and feather and furry friends in the Humane Society. That's wonderful. But let us not forget, there are those out there, low income, low and fixed income, that depends on United Way funding. Let's not forget that little aspect of your budget. It's the old, what's good for the goose, what's good for the gander logic. So let's not forget about our human neighbors, friends, those who are living under the bridges, living in tunnels. Let's not forget about them, folks. That's also considered the United Way Fund. Second, many of those of us who are on low income, fixed incomes, we get our water bills paid for by government subsidized housing. So we didn't really get to participate in your little poll question of your employed and employed poll question.
Peter, the topic is budget, not fluoridation.
Anyway, that's all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Anyone else wish to speak? Anyone else? Have the microphone, give me your address.
My name is Susie Zespiak. I live at 727 Georgiana Street. I am the manager and veterinarian at the Olympic Peninsula Humane Society. I've been in Port Angeles about, well, a little over 5 years. My first job out of school was working at the Humane Societies. The only thing I've wanted to do was to help animals that didn't have anybody to help them. And we've been able to do that actually pretty well for the last 5 years since I've been there. And I really appreciate everything that everyone else has already had to say and all their support that we have, because I know it hasn't always been that way. And we've been doing better and better every year as working together as a staff. We're always learning how to make things better and how to deal with situations as they come up. And I've learned that a lot of people around town don't really know exactly everything that we do. And that almost seems like a good thing to me, is that we're doing our job so well that it's not an issue. Everyone knows that they can refer to us for help, whether it's for food, for a spay neuter, for a straying animal they don't know what to do with. You know, they're moving out of town and they can't take their dog or their hamster or anything. But something that I wanted to bring up is the fact that what we do isn't really even just confined to what we do indoors. We've been asked on multiple occasions to help law enforcement with an animal out in the community. I had a list of several things, but to keep it short, one example I really wanted to talk about was the house fire a couple months ago on Lopez Street, I believe, which 12 dogs died in the fire. And we were asked by the police department and the fire department to help with the 12 dogs. So Mary Beth and I, we took a shelter vehicle out and we picked up these dogs. And we had to place them in bags, we put them in our car. We have a small freezer at our shelter that we hold either animals that have come in dead or we have to euthanize for various reasons. It won't hold 12 dogs. So we had to take our time to call local vet clinics, find space for these 12 dogs, drive them out there to put them in the freezer, as well as go back and pick them up so we could have a company called Petland, which picks up deceased animals and disposes, does cremation services for us. So, I mean, we're not obligated to do something like that, but, I mean, since we have the expertise and ability and knowledge of how to do that, we offer our help. And that's something that we want to continue to do. I mean, there's an agreement that we have that we are available to help, and to go beyond what we normally do just inside our doors and help the community and help, whether it's law enforcement or the fire department or anything like that, to help. The other thing I wanted to say was even just aside from the out of the ordinary things like the house fire, or a couple of years ago there was a ram that was running around town. I don't know if people remember that. Mary Beth and I also hopped in my car and drove down to the old Rainier Mill site to catch this ram that had been running around. And we housed it and eventually found a home for it. But that's out of the ordinary. The most important things is that the everyday things that we deal with. Aggressive dogs, feral cats. My own personal dog came in for biting. He was untouchable for the first 2 weeks. The only way we could move him around was with the catch pole. But we can do that. That's something that we do. We want to be able to do it. We don't want someone that doesn't know what they're doing to handle these dogs and get hurt. We have the tools, we have the expertise, we want to do this. My dog Roscoe, we worked with him every day, and now he's a happy, friendly dog. He comes to work with me every day. He still has his quirks, but I want to continue doing that. He came from the city. I want all the rest of those biting dogs to have that same chance. I don't want them to be held and not be evaluated and just considered to be unadoptable and get rid of them. That's not something that I want to see. The other thing is it's not just dogs and cats. We get a variety of animals from the city. I have a big list here. Rabbits, ferrets, guinea pigs, chinchillas, hamsters, cockatiels, parakeets, chickens, goats, snakes, fish, iguanas, rats, turtles. Right now we have 14 gerbils and a hamster that has lost 90% of its hair. A couple months ago we had 11 society finches, and last month we got a 6-foot-long boa constrictor. All these animals have different needs, requirements for feeding, housing, handling, and adoption. They all take time to find placement, whether it's an adoption or transferring to another rescue group. And this is what we do. I mean, that we know how to do this on a daily basis. To know that these types of things are now might be haphazardly handled by a group that doesn't want to do it makes me a little nervous. Other situations like when an owner dies and the pet has nowhere to go, they come to us. We take care of the housing of the animal, any medical needs. We take care of communicating with the family. That's something that rests on us, the city, the police department doesn't have to deal with that. We do that. Orphan kittens found in an alley that are too young to eat, we take them in, we feed them every 3 hours. I take them home personally, keep them in my bathroom, wake up in the middle of the night and feed them. I mean, this is something that only people do it if they want to do it. And if other people are forced to do it, it's just not going to work out as well. We had a situation very recently about we got a call of a man that lost his dog, and we get lots of calls every day of people that lost their animal and they ask for our help. We have a book that we keep lost in town animals, and it's, an animal comes in or we hear about somebody finding an
Could you sum
animal.
up your remarks, please?
Yes, we can match them up. But we got a gentleman who's missing his dog. Somebody who found the dog hit by a car and killed. It was brought to us, and we came in telling the owner that his dog had died, and arranging for the disposal, cremation, and pickup and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's just things that normal people don't want to have to deal with, but we do it. But of course, Port Angeles is no exception. All these scenarios happen in the city of Sequim and the rest of Clallam County, and that's just the thing. I mean, animal control and animal care, it's an unavoidable expense. It happens everywhere, and it affects everyone sooner or later. And I mean, we're here to take care of that, so no one has any worries about what's going to happen. Obviously, a lot of people are worried about what's going to happen, and for the cost of what it seems to just have one employee, you actually get a team of 12 shelter workers that can take care of virtually every animal situation that could occur. And I mean, that's what we want to do. And we aren't even asking you to do anything more than continue what you already have been doing. We're doing our part to move forward in the world of animal welfare. The community has shown that they want to make it better. We've raised over $1 million to build a new shelter. And so we can offer the animals something newer and bigger and better. And it's incredibly discouraging because the city is willing to regress and create more problems by taking the animal services away for the city. So hopefully to give you a little bit new insight of what we do and what we want to do and continue to do.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else would like to speak? For the final chance.
Holly DeMol, 114 West 6th Street, Ordinance. Just in regards to the Humane Society and feral cats, I've lived in quite a few different states and cities, and this is one of the only towns that I haven't seen a problem with feral cats. I've lived in a lot of different cities, but for whatever reason, I'm assuming it's the Humane Society, we have a handle on the feral cats. I don't know if you guys have lived anywhere that had multiple feral cats running around. We're scared and hungry, and it's not a pretty sight. They're, a little dangerous, and it's kind of nasty. They kind of go to the bathroom wherever they can because they don't have no place to live. Wherever they're put, that's where they make their home. And if we don't have a program to capture them and stay near them, they're like rabbits. They just keep producing, and it's not a pretty sight or fun for anybody. It's pretty sad, and I would hate to see that happen to Port Angeles, because it happens quite a few other places. So that's my insight. Thank you.
The Humane Society dialogue is kind of taken over the public comment and the public comment during the public hearing. This is not any part of the budget other than the Humane Society. I'm not trying to discourage you. What I want to do is encourage people who want to speak to other parts of the budget. These contracts that we're going to include, some of the services we're providing. Okay, 3 times. Anyone want to speak? Anyone would like to speak? Anyone would like to speak? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Okay, council, discussion, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor and council, with tonight's budget proposal going forward, if anybody bought their budget booklet, I'm actually on page 139 in Parks and Recreation Department. One of the key initiatives listed for 2016 that I've highlighted in my booklet is to continue to perform a high level of maintenance and repairs to ensure safe and enjoyable athletic fields, facilities, and parks for the public. I've recently met with Corey with Parks and Rec, and specifically asked him about the loss of the 4 tennis courts at the Peninsula College. Now, these tennis courts also not only benefited the college, but of course our public and our residents. So my question to Corey when I met with him the other day is, what's on the plan for fixing Shane Park, where there are 2 tennis courts currently that until last week I didn't know that they were locked, but we've locked out people from enjoying at least a smooth surface. I understand that there's a bit of a trip hazard that's was the reason for closing this, but I also know that we've received the money from the college for our building permit that was issued from the city, and I'd like to know what kind of reinvestment that we've got going into our community. We're hearing a lot of taking, and I want to hear something specific about giving back tonight regarding the Shane Park tennis courts. I would welcome any comment from staff about this.
Mayor, members of council, currently in the 2016 proposed budget, there are no funds set aside for reinvestment in the tennis courts at Shane Park. If that is something that council would like to see, then we can sit down and work with the Parks and Rec Director, Corey Delicott, and see how we can reallocate those funds. In addition, depending on where we actually end up in year end, there may be savings at year end that could be dedicated to that. But at present, there are no funds available for that unless council redirects some funding.
It just, again, we've got to come up with either a funding solution tonight or delete this from our budget proposal, Byron, because, again, it says continue to perform a high level of maintenance and repairs to ensure safe and enjoyable athletic fields, facilities, and parks for the public. We sold 4, we lost 4. I actually proposed, when I met with Corey, that we at least fill the sinkholes at Shane Park, and other people that would choose to use this even for walking their dog. It's got a gate that swings and closes. This facility is not available to the public. Corey and I looked at it. There's 1 sinkhole. There's probably, I'm just going to wildly guess, say 400 lineal feet of cracks. We bought the city road department the crack sealing machine a year ago. And that's something I see that could be used at that place to fill these holes. We need to return this facility over to the public's use. I understand to totally restore it to a tennis court surface is a lot of money, but we're locking people out, and I don't like this in our budget proposal, this word. We're sending a mixed message. So I want to hear from staff how we're going to fix this, or again, what you propose.
I can speak a little bit in general to the facilities repair and maintenance portion of the budget also. One of the things that we did in the last 2 years, and the council I think is aware of this, is that we did put an emphasis on the repair of our existing facilities. We had not put much money into our facilities prior to that time, and we have off and on. We have, for instance, if you remember, the Burton roof that had been in our capital facilities plan for many years. It had been leaking to the point that we had to cancel some tournaments. We were worried about the substructure and the costs that would incur if we didn't fix it. So what we did is we made a priority in taking certain percentages of our budget and reinvest in our existing facilities. So that year we replaced the Burton roof. We resurfaced the floor in the Burton. This upcoming year, what we're doing, in fact, last year we also, the parking lot in front of City Hall that needed repair that's used every day, we invested in that and resurfaced that. What we have in the budget for next year, just in Parks and Rec for existing facilities, is Civic Field, which is something that the council has been working with staff on. It has been identified as a priority. The lighting has been identified as a priority by council, and we have a plan now where we are in fact replacing the lighting at Civic Field. We've replaced already the boiler at Civic Field that had been out for years. We also are replacing the floats next year that have been damaged to the point that they couldn't be reused, and that is a significant expense. All of those items are part of the general fund. We do prioritize, we can't do everything in 1 year, but what we can do, like Byron said, if it is a priority of the council, if we do have savings for the next year and we meet our 25%, then we can look at that as an item and maybe repair some of the substructure apparently that's causing the sinkholes out in those facilities. But again, I don't want the council to get the impression that we aren't working on facilities just in Parks and Rec. In fact, those are the facilities that we actually are making a priority and using our limited funding to ensure those facilities are taken care of.
Manager McKean, I realize all of the ongoing work and the needed updates of the city facilities, but for instance, that you just mentioned, all involve outside contractors. What I'm proposing is that city staff, employees of our city, work, I'm guessing, a week. You're going to have to buy some cold fill asphalt. You're going to have to get that machine that we paid for as a council, we agreed to, and we're going to have to get up there and fix it and turn it over to the people. That's my proposal tonight.
Comments?
Yeah, I think it's great that we come up with a list of future projects, because I know that there's a couple of other things that could be used that way, but I think that our staff really does really hard work to try to maintain our facilities. They really do. And so I think what we need to do is get back together as the Parks Committee and really start highlighting, or I guess coming up with a list of all the things that we would like to see happen. Because I think to bring it up at this late date on the budget is a little unfair. Personally, that's what I think. So I would suggest that we meet together as the Parks Committee, come up with a list of all the projects, because I know that there's a couple more. You know, I know we play pickleball, the little crack is getting bigger, and great to use that chip and seal machine, but that we give staff the list and then we can prioritize it into next year's budget.
I actually was contacted by a constituent about this concern, that this person actually lives within walking distance of Shane Park. I'm actually somewhat embarrassed to learn that we lost 4 tennis courts in our community, and it has to be pointed out again from a constituent rather than staff, that we're losing 4 and we can't even keep 2 up and open to the public. So we took their money, that being the college, when they decided to close down and build the Allied Health Building. That construction's underway from what I know about it. So this isn't, if anything, I believe it's short-sighted, and I'll take part of the blame for that too. But again, the college paid us money. We've already, I'm sure, cashed that check for the permit. And in the meantime, we're going to be down 4 tennis courts in our community. This budget is about maintaining and trying to make do. And I, again, feel that we need to make an effort here to show the people that we're trying to turn over part of their parks back to them. It's, from what I understand, it's been locked for over a year. And did you decide to lock it? I didn't decide to lock it. All I'm hearing about is a loss of use from neighbors.
Right, but I'm just saying, to be fair, staff was probably locked for safety reasons, and so therefore, let's get back together into the Parks Committee, let's find out what other needs are there, and I'm hoping that the public will also let us know, you know, what are you seeing out there that you would like, and then, again, let's do this so that next year staff can have a priority list that we can bring forward.
I'd like to agree with Councilmember Brooke. I think it's not right to try to use the budget as a micromanaging instrument. I'm not unsympathetic to the idea that this needs to be looked at. I think that it should be looked at, but I don't think we can do that within the context of this budget decision tonight. I'm a little uncomfortable not knowing very much about it to vote that says, you know, I'm going to hold up the budget over this particular issue. I'd rather it was dealt with in a more comprehensive fashion than just added onto the budget.
Well, I appreciate this being brought to our attention. I personally want to look into it. So I like the suggestion of the Parks Department discussing, Parks Committee discussing it, because I personally would like to look into it, and I feel that it has a lot of merit moving forward.
What I'm afraid of is that probably every department that we have in the city has a list of priority items, and I would also be uncomfortable holding up the budget for one particular item, and I can appreciate the constituent being concerned about that, but before making a reactionary decision to try to fund a few tennis courts, I would like to find out what all the other items are that are on the priority list, because there may be a much greater constituent for other items. That's my take on that. Is it also time where we can talk about the Humane Society?
Oh, I'm
Or
not
do
sure
you
on
want
this
to
person.
finish on that topic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to raise it. I would certainly like to have our Parks Oversight Committee meet again. I can support both these concerns and Sissy's recommendation that our committee get back together. We obviously have some things we need to discuss. I think it's in that forum that would be most profitable for us to do it.
I'd like to address the Humane Society funding issue that we had asked staff to bring this back an option, and I think they've done a very good job. Thank you, staff, for bringing us this option tree. It looks excellent. I just wanted to talk about my concerns with this budget and some thoughts. I have a couple of copies of information I'm going to be referring to. I think there's a couple of snippets that guys may not have that. First of all, I have a copy of the page of our signed agreement between the City of Port Angeles and the Olympic Peninsula Humane Society, which was signed on the 18th day of November 2014. And I'm personally, my father taught me your word is your bond, and when I sign a check, when I sign an agreement, when I make a commitment, you can take it to the bank, and that's your reputation, that's who you are. And I feel so proud of this council and the good work we do and the best interest we have in the community. So when this was signed by our mayor on behalf of the council, I feel like that my signature was there too, because that was signed on behalf of the council. So I feel that it's, number one, it's important that the city has the reputation of living up to its commitments and agreements, and so I take pride in doing that. And then Councilmember Brooke brought up a question last council meeting. When we did our priority setting, Councilmember Brooke asked last time if the Humane Society and animal control was actually a part of our code and responsibility of the city. And this evening, Mr. Blower has given us some information from Section 7 of our code, plus RCW state statutes. And I think that is really significant. When we did our priority setting, I was not apprised that that public safety was included as animal control was included as part of our Port Angeles Municipal Code. And so looking it up, Port Angeles Municipal Code 7.01.010, the purpose of this title to provide means of controlling animal behavior so that such behavior shall not endanger human safety or become a public nuisance. It is also the purpose of this title to provide for humane use, care, and treatment of the animals. And then in another section of the code, it says, the animal control authority of the city of Port Angeles is vested in the police chief. So the city really takes, and then another section, animal control authority means the city of Port Angeles, acting alone or in concert with other agencies. And an animal shelter may be maintained, owned, operated, maintained by an established humane society. So this is in our city code. And I wasn't aware of that, or I would have scored the Humane Society higher. I tried to score it as high as it was eligible, but I didn't understand that it's also an RCW that a 16.52.011 that says the Humane Society is authorized, and that the following dog and cat control regulations are designed to protect public health, safety, and the welfare of the animals. So we do have not only a responsibility to the community, but we have the authority and for public safety also. So I think that that's very important to be considered. So we have signed an agreement. It's in our code that we have this responsibility, and then it's in the state code as well as our local code. And I believe that I do support option number 3. But the city must live up to our agreements. We must take our responsibility. Public safety and welfare is the job of the council. Past councils have done this, that's why it's in our code, and I feel that it's very wise to continue with this. So I will strongly be supporting option number 3 to fully reinstate the funding for the Olympic Peninsula Humane Society. Thank you.
I do appreciate Councilwoman's Kidd's comments, and I also want to recognize and express my interest in supporting an option Mr. Collins has brought forward. It's a part of our packet. There seems to be in politics and in our communities this desire to disrespect the word compromise. It has to be always black and white. And this is not a black and white situation. really isn't. So I really want to support a motion tonight that sort of ask everybody who has a part of this to be responsible. I appreciate also the work of the Humane Society and their hard work. So I would certainly want us, I would hope that we would want to try to find a solution that would incorporate the fee structure, asking people who have pets, who have animals that they should be responsible for, to be willing to pay a fee for their responsibility. I think that is reasonable, balanced, and responsible. Number two, I think I share those comments that have already been expressed even again tonight that we have reached an agreement, a fair and agreement with the Humane Society that to the fullest extent possible, we need to honor that tonight. And so I guess I'm looking for a blended response and possibility of restoring some funding to the Humane Society to the fullest extent possible. I ask the public to help us with this, for the use of fees. That's the right thing.
A year ago, we started a process where we indicated to community groups that we weren't able to sustain their funding, and we gave them notice of that. I actually didn't support the idea that we would discontinue funding for community groups, such as United Way and Humane Society. I thought in my earlier votes on budget issues, I continued to want to provide those funds that we had normally provided. But a year ago, we indicated to those groups that we were going to start a process which said that we could fund outside community groups again. And if we're going to change that, I'm all in favor of it. I think that groups that provide health, safety, and welfare do deserve our support. And I think that the Humane Society is a good example that there are external costs that if we don't do that, they cost more. Same thing is true with homeless. If we don't provide support for homelessness, those people end up in jail or in the emergency room at the hospital and cost twice as much or 10 times as much to provide services. So I think it's misguided on our part to decide that we're not going to fund those community groups that provide public health, safety, and welfare benefits. And so if we are going to go back on that priority, which I favor us going back on that priority, I think we need to do it universally, not just for one group. I also think that it suggests that we probably need to look at additional funding, and I appreciate your comments, Councilmember Downey. What I did is try to come up with a way that this would be sustainable for the Humane Society. Apparently, I've owned dogs for 64 years. Always had a dog. Actually, until my grandchildren moved in 2 years ago. But now I got the dog back because they moved out. But apparently, I'm one of the few responsible owners in the city of Port Angeles to actually buy the dog license. I hope the rest of you who are out there arguing so vehemently for the welfare of animals have a clean conscience and that you have licensed your animals. I would increase the licensing. I would increase the, if your animal strays and the Humane Society has to deal with it, that you have to pay an extra fee to do that. And I would also encourage us to do what we do for the indigent on our electric utility, where we offer the opportunity to people who are concerned and responsible to pay an optional amount of money to help support the Humane Society. I think unless we have sustainable funding, then we're going to just be back here next year, the year after that, with the same issue. We don't have resources for it. We haven't generated the resources for it. And it's different. If the contract with the Humane Society is to be held like you know, the contracts the Public Works Department has for services, for tree service or something like that, we don't have it in a separate line or separate category in the budget, then we should put the Humane Society under the police department and animal control as part of the police department's budget, and they do a contract, and we're not trying to micromanage that contract. So I think the only way we're going to see a resolution of this issue is to come up with the resources that are necessary to provide sustainable services. I think when I read that, there's a difference between animal control and animal welfare, and maybe the city's responsibility is animal control. But to my way of thinking, we have to have a sustainable budget. We have to have sustainable resources to cover those items in the budget. And I believe that, you know, this whole argument that's been raised here about the Humane Society applies to more than just animals. I think it applies to the people in our society which are suffering from safety, health, and welfare issues as well.
Well, you know, Mr. Mayor, and to Brad's comments, I just cannot resist it. We need to personally say that how we, I would restore the budget to each of the human health and human service agencies. I used to be some of you know, I was for 12 years the program coordinator for Catholic Human Services, volunteer services program for seniors and disabled adults. United Way Partner Agency. I understand, I really do understand how these things work and how lives are changed. Pets and human lives. Hugely important. And how we answer these kinds of questions, I assume, is how we are defined, how we see ourselves, and how others see us as a community of excellence. Unless we take better care of ourselves and those pets that we have in our homes, we cannot call ourselves a city of excellence. I strive to be that. I want us to be that. So the kinds of decisions we're making tonight is, my information, are hugely important.
I just want to make two clarifications to Brad's comments. One is that it's my understanding that the Humane Society was not given advance notice this was coming. They didn't know about this until they received the letter. I heard that said. So that's different than the other agencies who knew about this well in advance that this was coming.
Thanks for that.
And the comment that we're cutting the funding, I think is somewhat misleading. We're reducing the funding. All those agencies continue to get funding for the next 2 to 3 years, but only at reduced levels. So I don't want to leave the impression that we're not funding any of those agencies. We are, but at lesser degree. So I just want this clarification. You have comments?
Yeah, I do. And I appreciate the comments that have been made, but I also know that the reason we went down the line of the priority setting was because we did not have as much funds as we expected to have. And we had to cut something. And so I guess I want us to keep that in mind. I really appreciate staff's putting together this option number 3. And I think it's a good one. I think it gives us time to reevaluate some of the things that we've done, and also try to come up with a way to make find sustainability for some of the other groups. But I don't think that right now we need to dismantle anything. I think that if we take option number 3, it buys us time, at least it buys us until the next budget cycle to try to figure some of this stuff out again. We are going to go through a priority and strategic planning that will hopefully also guide us to more of the priorities for the council. And so, I guess unless there's any more comments, I'm happy to move.
I haven't had a chance to talk either.
We're
just waiting on.
Well, it's Robert's right. I'll let him cry.
You can wait. I was looking for a nod that you folks wanted to talk and didn't see anything. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I'd just like to, number one, thank everyone for attending tonight and speaking up on behalf of the animals. Also, Mr. Ripley for United Way. From the mayor's statement, we're projected to reduce for the other 3 agencies. I do fully support using the REIT fund. I'll agree with you. Let's get into all this charitable giving next year. This refund in that particular instance would be the perfect way to use this, a one-time funding, until we resolve this next year with the new council member on board as well. So I do, again, support the refund.
Are you implying on the problem?
No, Mr. Mayor, you don't mean that. But again, it's going to be council priority going forward, so we're going to be affecting not only next year's budget, but a few more after that, so thank you.
It's my turn. Just a handful of things. First, thanks so much for everybody that spoke to the topic and emailed us and ran across us at Costco and shared your thoughts and ideas. It was very, very helpful and educational. I was really pleased at the information that staff provided for us very quickly. Last Wednesday before the holiday, we had all the answers to the questions that I know I had been looking for from both the city attorney and on budget items. My question was, before we made a decision, where's the money coming from? You know, and I think that we've got a good answer for that. You know, the other thing is that as a council, our job is to spend money from the general fund on police, fire, medics, roads and parks, basically is it. And I didn't realize to the extent that the animal control was part of a public safety issue. So I learned a lot from that too, under that. So I feel very comfortable in reestablishing the funding that we had planned for next year, which was $53,400. We were going to get $48,800, so it was only reducing it $16,000, and we came up with $16,000. So I don't see an issue with that. This is only for 2016. The 2017 budget is next year, and so I really agree with Councilmember Collins. It'd be a really good idea to, well in advance, start looking ahead at ways to make this even more sustainable, so we don't have to be throwing shockwaves into the system, and advanced planning. And finally, the comment with regards to the whole priority setting system. It's been years and years in coming. We finally had a priority setting system with lots and lots of public input, and I think it really did good, but it's not a perfect system, and it was our first time. So I think we're learning a lot from that. And I think every year we'll take that knowledge that we learned, we'll refine it, we'll tweak it to really improve the whole process. So I'm in favor of option 3. And
Yeah, I want one comment on that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was having a hard time resolving in my mind the fact that we had established this priority list, and the first time we tried to implement it, we got resistance. And then I got to thinking the other morning as I was driving to the city hall, meet with the city manager, that it is a plan, and plans are living documents, and they can change. And so I fully support honoring the contract that we have with the Humane Society. I think that our not following to the exact letter of the model that allows for change and flexibility, and I think this is one of those opportunities. So I'm on board with that without any reservation. I also support the REIT funding option for the coming year.
And one final thing I forgot to mention before. I also wanted to apologize to the lady that spoke, that was the corporate officer at Nippon, that, because I made a comment for the last meeting with regards to one of the challenges that we've dealt with is because of the shortfall of tax revenue. And I didn't mean to pick Nippon out as the bad guy by any means, and I certainly didn't imply to blame anything on them. That was just one of the bigger examples that we had. There's a lot of sources, or the lack of sources of funds that we had to deal with. So my apologies to Nippon. Now, how the press reports what we say is a whole different ballgame. So, anyway, thank you.
Well, I just want to reiterate that I believe that it's the responsibility of the council to come up with sustainable funding, not just stopgap funding. And I also believe that we need to revisit what we're doing with the United Way. And I expect that, we need to revisit what we're doing with United Way, and I expect that to come back as a budget amendment in 2016. We don't need to deal with it tonight, but I'm going to certainly pressure the council to get back to funding for United Way.
Well, like it's time to see how I have a sign in my office. It says, everything is on working progress. But this is too.
Okay, so, I move that we amend the proposed 2016 budget to provide the additional $16,200 in the general fund for Olympic Peninsula Humane Society, with funding to be provided by savings to the general fund, provided by the use of REIT 1 funding for a partial grant match for the flat grant.
I second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I think this is the right thing to do. We have signed a contract. We need to keep our commitment. And our priority setting was admirable, but it was a learning process. And I think as we go along, we refine it, we learn, and as the mayor said, it's a living document. So I respect every council member for their opinions, and I promote and recommend number 3. So I support this motion.
Anyone else? Not hearing any. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
We now need a motion to adopt the budget as amended.
I know that. Are there other issues of the budget that you want to discuss?
So, I move to adopt the 2016 budget as amended.
Second.
Okay, take the vote, second discussion.
I've got a further question later, or further back in our budget. For anyone that's concerned, it's on page 242. It talks about citywide personnel summary continued. Recently, we agreed as a council to turn over our prosecution of misdemeanors and gross misdemeanors to the county. And when that presentation was given to us as a council, I specifically remember being told that this would reduce legal department by 2 full-time employees. And on page 242, it shows a reduction of 1.80%. So we've got 0.20, or roughly a quarter. I'm guessing $40,000. I'm guessing. Mr. Bloor, I'd love to hear your reasoning from then to now why we are not cutting the full two full-time employees.
We did eliminate 2 positions, so they're gone. In doing that, in order to restructure the legal department, we increased one person who was a 0.8 FTE to a full-time FTE. And that was to help us cover the workload because of the loss of the other 2 FTEs.
Why wasn't that explained to council at the time we were actually, what was that total dollar amount? It was $800,000, I believe, somewhere around there. Again, specifically, I remember 2.0 FTEs.
That's correct. We eliminated 2 full positions. That left us with some additional workload that hadn't been covered, that wasn't covered. And so we increased one of the part-time positions to a full-time position.
I may be able to jump in and help with that. One of the part-time positions, by increasing her to full-time, it was an additional $15,000. That employee already had full medical benefits, so it was a fairly insignificant cost increase.
That's what I was thinking about, the Humane Society, but anyways. Another part about the finance, Byron, 2012 there was 17.75 FTEs, and 2015 budget amendment 2, if we have agreed to this later on this evening, the way I understand it, it shows 20, and your 2016 proposed budget is 19.80. I see that you're the only department, I believe, that's gone up in a good percent over the 4-year period. So why do we need to add extra folks in the finance department?
I'd have to take a look at the spreadsheet you're looking at, but I know in the finance department, just like every other department in the city, we've actually reduced staff over the years. So
Well, this is.
2016 is at a much lower level than we were in 2012.
Actually, no, it's not. The finance department in 2012 is listed at 17.75 actual, and 2016 proposed is 19.80.
Yeah, I could take a look at that. Perhaps we have an error in our spreadsheet. We're down one full-time senior accountant position, and then we just reorganized our customer service staff for 2016, which also provided some reduction.
Okay, I'm just trying to seek a clarification on this. We're trying to figure out where we're going to come up with money, and from what I've been presented with, finance department personnel has grown. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Let me read the ordinance. An ordinance of the City of Ordinances, Washington, adopting the 2016 budget for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2016. It's council's pleasure.
I move that we adopt the ordinance as read.
Second. And move second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I'd like to follow up with Councilmember Collins' comments about opening up our charitable giving next year. I'd also like to open up what we're going to do about the Shane Park tennis courts. Again, we've taken the money from an entity that we've lost 4 courts, and yet a facility of the parks remains locked.
I think we have a plan in place to try to address that concern.
I haven't heard that yet, so I just want to make that for the record. Thank
The
you.
plan is that the Parks and Recreation Committee will get together and try to find a way to resolve that issue. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We have a budget for next year. We need a break? Let's take a 5-minute break. Okay, we'll recess. The order of the agenda this evening, we have some folks who are out of town that I'd like to give a presentation on so they can go home. So let's move right to the Climate Change Preparedness Plan.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Thank you, council members, for having me. My name is Kate Dean, and I'm the coordinator of the North Olympic Peninsula Resource Conservation and Development Council. There's a lot of acronyms, so I'll refer to the RC and D. We also are currently merging with the Peninsula Development Association or Administration, the PDA. You have been members of both of those organizations for many years. Patrick Dowdy has been your representative. We do community and economic development projects for Jefferson and Clallam counties. So we operate as a nonprofit council of governments. This is one of many projects that we're participating in right now. I'm going to talk about the Climate Change Preparedness Plan, and I'll be referring to this plan many times throughout our presentation. Normally we do this presentation in over an hour, so we're going to try and scoot through this really quickly. But mostly what I want to do is present to you the kind of tools that are contained within this project. So I'll go into a little bit of detail. We were funded by the State Department of Commerce to come up with primarily land use strategy recommendations for jurisdictions on the North Olympic Peninsula to be thinking, to be planning for climate change. And you'll see there's some other strategies we recommend, but this is primarily land use. The project boundaries for this were all of the watersheds that drain into the Straits and Hood Canal in the inner 2 counties. You'll see it does not include the coastal portions of our counties. So, like I said, funded by the Department of Commerce, primarily to inform comprehensive and strategic planning processes, but there are a number of ways that these strategies can be incorporated into code, and I'll go into some of those tools. I was the grant administrator on the project. We worked with some consultants, Adaptation International. It's a national group that does plans like this across the country, and Washington Sea Grant. You're going to hear tonight also from Dr. Ian Miller, who is also a professor at Peninsula College. We just wrapped up the 16-month project at the end of October. The project had a few key deliverables. One was to create the plan, what I refer to as the plan. We went did a fairly extensive collection of all of the best available science, the data we have on climate change projections from peer-reviewed sources. We have held very high bar in terms of the science we were using. So we collected the projected impacts that we have. We identified key sectors, locations, call those the key vulnerabilities, looked at the impacts projected for that, and then came up with adaptation strategies. So I'll go into more detail on each of these. We're doing a series of presentations like these all across the peninsula to planning commissions, various staffs, county commissions, etc. Another deliverable, we created some example planning language, which I'll show you some examples of, and we came up with a monitoring plan. And that will help kind of continue this work into the future. The process, I just talked a little bit about that, conducted a high-level climate assessment. Sorry, this is coming up a little bit wonky. Identified vulnerabilities and priorities through a workshop setting. And then after the priorities had been identified, then we worked also in a workshop setting with a very large group of stakeholders to develop adaptation strategies. And you'll see we went through a ranking process to gather as much community input, but also give a little bit of teeth to the project to say we really have a sense that these are priorities in our region. So just to give you an idea, we had almost 200 participants take part in this. There were 6 authors and staff working on this, 14 core team members, of which a couple of, Brad was a member of the core team, I believe. We certainly had some participation from the city, which we appreciate. Then 175 partners who were involved in the workshop process. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to very quickly go over some of the projected climate change, what we can expect to see in this region. And again, this is just a very brief kind of introduction to the tools. So for example, you can look in this report and find a really thorough analysis of the projections and the citations of where that data came from. We're lucky to have the Climate Impacts Group at University of Washington close by, so they were the source of a lot of the data that we had. Temperature changes, as we saw this year. I'm going to use this year as an example, not that this past year is necessarily what we'll call climate change, but it's certainly indicative of what we're told we can expect to see more of in the future. Increase in temperatures. This year we actually saw an increase more like 2 to 4 degrees centigrade over average in the summertime, which puts us at really kind of 2070 projected time frame. But we can expect to see more days over 90 degrees, warmer evenings, longer frost-free season. Being somewhat a maritime climate, we're going to see less increased temperature than other parts of the region or other parts of the country, which are more continental. Precipitation change is a pretty significant impact when we think about land use planning, because the change that we'll see in precipitation is not in the total amount of precip. We actually expect that to remain relatively static over time, but we can expect to see less rain falling in the summertime, certainly less snowpack like we saw this year. We can expect to see larger weather events, so more considerations for things like stormwater. And of course, this impacts drinking water supplies as well. I'm going to hand it over to Ian to talk a little bit about sea level rise.
Yeah, sure. All right, thank you so much. So my name is Ian Miller. I'm with Washington Sea Grant, based out of the University of Washington, but in fact I sit up at Peninsula College just up the hill. So I was involved in this project and led the portion on sea level rise, which was of particular interest, not surprisingly, because we live in a coastal community. We did a couple of things in this project that we thought represented advancements relative to how this kind of information has been communicated previously in other communities, certainly in Washington. One of them is that we took full account of things like vertical land movement in our community that are sort of driving the land, in Port Angeles' case, slightly upward. But one of the big ones is that we communicated the projections in this probabilistic way. And so what you're looking at here are a variety of curves. The black curves are very typical of what you might see for sea level rise projections. They're coupled with the red line, which is the historic sea level in the Strait of Juan de Fuca dating back to the 40s. And the thing that we did here is communicated the full range of sea level rise, taking into account all the uncertainties for the components that cause sea level rise. Things like melting ice in Antarctica and Greenland, for example. All those things represent uncertainties, but by providing sea level information in this probabilistic framework, we think that we provide a more nuanced tool for decision making. So the way to sort of read this is the numbers in black are probabilities of occurrence, effectively. And so you can sort of see the lower line represented there, the 99th percentile, almost certain to occur. And then you can sort of move up from there. The median is 50% chance, obviously. And then you've got that 1% chance sort of at the top. That's the highest that we communicate here. But it sort of allows you a tool that allows a community to do a little risk-benefit analysis, maybe make nuanced decisions based on the type of infrastructure, the type of decision you play. So not too much detail here. I would love to sort of have an opportunity to present more detail if there was an opportunity, but we did want to run through a few of the maps that we developed. We did develop a full suite of maps for Port Angeles, and I'm showing you an example here. One of the other things that we did is we coupled the sea level rise information to our annual storm-based water levels. So we know that during winter in particular, we tend to get storms that elevate water level, especially when they're associated with high tide. We can calculate a probability of that occurring in any given year, and we can tie that right into the sea level rise information. I call it sort of the Hurricane Sandy kind of thing, where you're not interested in some of the kind of slow average change in sea level. You're interested in how it changes the extremes. So this particular map is kind of our current picture of storm surge with the colored bar relating to the probability of occurrence. So light blue is 1% chance. Every one time in 100 years, we expect to see flooding in the, for example, at the end of Eddie Sunk at the Coast Guard base, roughly consistent with what the Coast Guard talks about. Moving into 2030, you can see that we don't see much change in the extent of this flooded area, but we see a change in how likely it is to flood. We also see some small areas around Ennis Creek and downtown, also on the fringes of Eddie Sunk. Not surprising, those are areas that are currently sort of exposed. As we move to 2050, we just see essentially, again, a change in percent chance of flooding in these areas, and also a little bit of new areas emerging. And then really the major change for Port Angeles happens between 2050 and 2100, where we start to see significant areas that have a significant chance of flooding in any given year, and also a significant increase in the areas exposed to flooding. So again, we designed this information to hopefully be useful and hopefully be pertinent to decision making.
So all of the report is available online. And I suggest if you're interested in those maps, it's a great way to be able to zoom in much more closely.
So where online?
I'll leave my website up here at the end. So I just want to talk about some of the process where we worked again with almost 200 participants. This is just an example of a matrix we use to identify a priority area. So this is an example when we looked at critical infrastructure. These locations are where participants said they were concerned. We ranked them according to the adaptive capacity on the left axis there. It might be a little difficult to see how adaptive are they. If they are not very adaptive, that put them up towards the high end of that. And then their sensitivity, how sensitive are they to climate change? And that helped us to identify the regions that we needed to look most closely at. So once we identified those priority areas, we then developed a pretty extensive list of adaptation strategies. And I'm going to go through 30. We broke these down into 3 different primary categories, one being water supplies, 2 being ecosystems, which are both managed and natural ecosystems, and the 3rd being critical infrastructure. So I pulled up the top 10 for each of these, just to give you an example of the kinds of strategies we're recommending. Like I said, many of them are water supply, are land use based, but not all. For example, enhance education on drought and water supply issues for the peninsula.
I'm sorry, I'm seeing this for the first time. Could you not talk so fast? I'm trying to listen and read and just work with me here, because it's the first time I've seen your slides.
Sure. And like I snapshot of the tools that are available in the report in 15 minutes. This is 250 pages, the report, so I can't go into the type of detail I'd like to. So for each of the 3 categories, again, water supplies, critical infrastructure, and ecosystems, we have about 30 strategies that we're recommending. I pulled up the top 10 here. I highlighted the ones in yellow, which were most relevant to a municipality like Los Angeles. And then for each of the 30 strategies, in the report then we go into great detail, and I'll show you some examples. Maybe I'll skip through to come back. So here's a detail of one, ecosystem adaptation strategy, update municipal codes to account for enhanced risk, fire risk at forest residential interface. So we talk about what is the time frame for implementation. That could be near term. Who are the lead groups? That would be local government. What are the opportunities or concerns, and focus area or co-benefits. Then we also outline some key action steps. So we try to at least give some links to other related resources. So for the 100 or so adaptation strategies we identified in the report, we have this level of detail to help guide primarily staff. Many of these would fall under community development staff who are dealing with some of these issues firsthand. Many of them are kind of code and building permit related. So just to go back to give you an idea of some of the other strategies. Water supplies, sorry, I showed that one already. Ecosystems, of course our economy is very much based on ecosystems, managed ecosystems. When we think about shellfish and forestry and agriculture, so we really see this work here as having significant impact on trying to protect some of our economic drivers as well. So you see a number of these are related to agriculture and forestry. Again, we really clearly outline the very specific risks to each of those sectors in the report. Just another example, update planning documents for sea level rise and flooding where needed. That's fairly general. We also go into more detail on kind of specific how other communities have changed their code to account for greater risk in sea level rise, especially in coastal areas. Promote and incentivize smart irrigation technologies for agriculture. So, like I said, these are just a glimpse at some of the tools. We hope that this plan can go into any number of planning processes that the city might undertake, and we're happy to present in more detail on any of those more specific, department-specific plans that you might be working on. Just want to give you an example, and we have a number of examples of ordinance and code language that other cities have adopted. City of Olympia is interesting. They actually have near-term, medium-term, and long-term tasks based on the amount of sea level rise they're experiencing. So they are now at a point, a very small amount of sea level rise that triggered their near-term actions, and now they're looking towards their medium-term tasks, which is when sea level rise reaches 0.25 to half a foot, that will kick into play these actions. So that's one example of a nearby city that has been pretty progressive in planning. To put up all of this for our partners. But here I wanted to leave up my website and email address. And Nathan West also could be a resource for tracking me down, as well as Brad Collins and Sissy work with Patrick. So I really would love to engage with you in a more specific way. I'm sorry that tonight had to be so brief and such a general overview, but I hope that this can be a good tool for your staff and for your long-term planning.
Council, I'd also note that we can provide a color copy of the report for you if that's something that you would like, but we'll do so as requested if that's okay.
I request, please.
Me too.
Yeah, I just, as you were presenting it, dawned on me that Port Angeles won't be the only city that's going to look at some of the policy updates, and anybody that's along the coast. And so it would save us a lot of time if we all if there was like one general one already. And I wonder whether the county, because obviously, we have a smaller base and they have a larger one, but working with the county to have it ready, so we just borrow it. And please do have it. Edit afterwards, maybe.
Yeah, I'd say the county has not been, hasn't expressed a lot of interest in being proactive with this. What I will say that another way that this report can be useful is I think more and more funding sources are asking for proof of contingency planning, emergency management, all of which this can fall under. And that's another way that this plan can be useful is that for those of you who work on securing those funding sources like I do, to be able to say, look, we've done some planning, we've done the research, we have a publication to support that. So that's another great use of this.
Yeah, lots of questions come to my mind, but one very obvious one. I would be curious to know if the United States Coast Guard was in your participating in these proceedings, because if anybody was going to be mostly directly sooner than anybody else, it appears to be all those that are on the NSO,
Yeah.
in particular Coast Guard.
Yeah, we did have a representative at the critical infrastructure workshop, first set of workshops, I believe. And yeah, in fact, the state and federal agencies were extremely well represented throughout the process, and it seems like they're kind of a driver, once maybe the early adopters. We had really strong participation from, and things like the National Park and the National Forest, who have written their own climate adaptation plan. They were very helpful to us through this process. So, Coast Guard as well as many other agencies.
Well, I was just going to say, some of the take-homes you can have here, the 16 months I've been along with this, is that the good news is that our sea level rise here is likely to be less severe than other places on Puget Sound. So the reaction elsewhere is likely to be more acute than it is here. The second thing is that this is, I think, an excellent model that will be used by other communities to how to. And I guess the third thing that I think is really important is to realize that it's really getting a head start on emergency management planning, whether it's wildfire, whether it's flooding. We see on the TV all the time all these communities that are being impacted, and we have a chance to sort of get ahead of the curve a little bit and understand where those events could occur and what our strategies could be to reduce the impact of those vulnerabilities. And our climate obviously moderates a lot of the severe temperature changes that might occur elsewhere. So, I mean, we're ahead of the game here, and I think this is a very useful, this has been a very useful study.
Thank you for your participation.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that we had to limit you because we have a very busy agenda, but I would suggest to the council that maybe during a workshop next year that you invite these folks back to be able to devote a full hour, hour and a half, or even longer to this topic, because this seems to be very vital and important. So,
thank you. And I'd say too, we've also been presenting, for example, in Port Townsend, to the council with the Planning Commission in a work session. And I don't know, does the City of PA have a Planning Commission as well? So we could perhaps do a double header like that, and with staff as well. So we really do not want this report to sit on the shelf. We'd love to know how it would be useful to you. So please let us know.
no, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll go back to the next public hearing is the public 2015 budget amendment number 3.
Hello again. So we are planning to amend the 2015 budget for the third and final time this year. In the packet, we have 3 pages of all of the items that are included in this amendment. I won't spend any time going through that list, but I will highlight a couple of the major items. You can see in the electric utility fund that we have reduced revenues and expenditures both by $6 million. And that directly relates to power purchase from EPA related to our industrial transmission customer. We have a couple of fund closures that Byron will be going over shortly. So we have some budget activity related to the fund closures. the majority of the items on the list are actually related to capital projects moving forward into 2016 or even beyond. So I don't know that we actually need to have a public hearing, although I think we put it on that portion of the agenda. And typically we have two readings of the ordinance.
In the past, while not required, we have traditionally in the past provided for a public hearing because it's a budget-related matter, and we wanted to be more inclusive rather than less inclusive.
I agree, that's what we should do. So, questions of Sherry, before we go to the public hearing? All right, thank you, Sherry. Okay, we'll open up the public hearing. Anybody wishes to speak to the voice amendment, please come to the microphone, give your name and address. Please come to the microphone, give your name and address. Final chance. Okay, we'll continue the public hearing on December 15th meeting. And let me read the ordinance. Amendment. An ordinance of the City of Ordinances, Washington, amending 2015 budget. Okay. So let's go back up. Any items for this agenda?
No, there are not.
Consent agenda. Anyone want to pull anything from the consent agenda? And now I will read it. City Council minutes of November 17, 2015, and expenditure approval list from November 7, 2015 through November 20, 2015, in the amount of $2,320,446.88.
Move to approve as read.
Second.
Then move to second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Non-representative staff salary and benefit package for 2016 and 17.
Good evening. Tonight, I'm presenting the non-represented benefit schedule, or benefit package, I should say, for 2016 and 17. We're currently in negotiations with all groups, with all unions for 2016 and forward. We have prepared a package for the non-represented group for 2016 and 17 that include the following. A transition to the new health care plan effective January 2016. A one-time health care offset effective January 2016, depending on what plan the employee chooses. And a cost of living effective January 2016 of 1%, and then a 90% CPI in 2017 with a minimum 1%, maximum 3%. And lastly, a Me Too clause for the non-representing group. So just as a summary, as you may remember, our current healthcare plan is terminating in 2018. So we're taking 2016 and transitioning to a new healthcare plan, and we're starting with the non-represented group. We have proposed that to the other bargaining units that are part of the AWC plan, and we'll see how that goes for 2016. To help transition, we are offering a healthcare offset to help with the out-of-pocket. It's an increased out-of-pocket expenses for the employee. So we are looking at a $250 healthcare offset for the group health plan, access PPO, if that's what an employee chooses, or a one-time $2,000 contribution to a health savings account for the high deductible healthcare plan. Both plans are significantly lower cost in premiums compared to what our plan is currently. We also are recommending a 1% cost of living for 2016, and then also a 90% CPI. Let me back up. The CPI for 2015 from June to June for Seattle, Tacoma, Bremerton was 1.1%. Traditionally, we give a 90%, so we bumped it up to 1, which is 0.99, so we bumped it up to 1%. And then for 2017, we're looking at 90% CPI with a minimum 1%, maximum 3%. And lastly is the Me Too clause. So we are in negotiations with others, with the rest of the negotiation groups, or union groups, I should say. And the city manager has stressed the how hardworking the non-represented management employees are, and productivity, and their commitment is deserving of the same as what the the other unions, negotiate for themselves as comparable benefits. So what we're recommending is that if one of the unions negotiates a better deal for wages and healthcare, and this only pertains to the non-arbitration groups, so this would not pertain to the police or the fire groups, that the council, recommend and support our Me Too clause as part of the salary and benefits package. So with that, we are asking that the council conduct the first reading of the proposed ordinance and then continue on to the next meeting on December 10th.
Questions about it?
Abby, I've got a couple questions. So what groups are signed into 2016 and 17?
We don't have any. All of our contracts are open.
And then the groups that will sign and actually negotiate a higher amount, would that department head be non-represented, non-union? Would he also get that increase that his department negotiated?
No.
So non-represented staff then would be basically tied to the 2% each year?
1%.
1%.
Right. 1% for 16, and then a minimum 1% for 17. And then depending, so our department directors and managers are part of a non-represented group.
Right.
And not part of the union.
Right.
So this package is for that non-represented group, and then adding the Me Too clause then could potentially give them the same benefit as the union that they.
That actually I thought was what I asked. If a group for that department gets a larger amount of raise, then that department leader would also get that increase.
So if we came back and, a 2% was negotiated, then yes, that's what we're asking for, is that the non-representing group would also receive that 2% increase.
So that would be everybody, not just the head of that department.
Yeah, I don't know if I support that.
Well, I think, to be fair, just because they don't have a union to fight for them, I think we need to be fair to all the workers. I'm always extremely concerned knowing, where the money's going to come from, and the fact that we just keep upping the wages. Like I said, I know that finally this year we'll hopefully going to see a little bit more taking the funds, but it's still
I might be able to help discussion along with it too. One of the things that this does, there is significant savings by transitioning to the new healthcare plan. And as Abby said, this is a transitional year for negotiations, because we do need to go to a new healthcare plan no later than January 1, 2018. We're starting early. And with the benefits as described, there's still a savings to the city, and this is one of the smallest groups in the city, of $43,000. In other words, with all the benefits paid, just because we're transitioning to the new health care plan, the city is saving $43,000. And with all the bargaining groups, this is one of the strategies used to help balance the budget based on our revenue deficit. The other item with the Me Too clause is that in order for the city to go beyond what the council authorized in our closed session, we would have to come back to the council. So the council still has control over what we offer the non-arbitration groups. And that's the Me Too clause only applies to the non-arbitration groups. And as we know, arbitration groups, they have the ability to go to binding arbitration, which is a third party who would decide what that group would get, not the council. So the council does have control with the other groups and would understand what the total impact would be before any decision is made.
I'd like to actually address Manager McKean's comments. We actually do control non-represented because they are not represented by any other organized labor group. It sounds to me like the department heads have a win-win situation, that they're going to get a minimum of this amount, Yet if their department or organized labor group is successful and gets a larger amount, they're gonna get more. If,
But they're not negotiating. The department heads are not negotiating.
that's right, the department heads are not negotiating, their groups are.
But everybody, I mean, so say, one of the groups, electrical, gets more, you know, but then that means that all the folks who are in this group, all of them would get that same raise.
Including department heads,
Including department.
which are non-represented.
Right, so all the non-representatives.
Not just the department heads, these are some of the lowest. There are
So yes, so you're right.
stratas. Yeah.
Are there others besides department heads that are not represented in the groups?
In fact, the department heads are the minority of the non-represented group.
I want to say there's about 25 people in this group.
I just assumed that they would all be union employees. All right.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to point out that the department heads don't negotiate union contracts, and so they have no control over that.
I just, again, fully am aware of how a union contract is negotiated. These individuals are not represented, is my total point on this. The fact of the matter is they're going to make their increases off of another group's back without paying any union dues into this organization that represents, whatever, 50% of this group.
So a couple clarifying questions, please. So with the third bullet point, the 1% COLA for 2016, as an example, if any of the bargaining groups negotiate a 2% COLA, just pick the Me Too clause automatically then makes all the non-represented also bump right up to a 2%.
Right.
So in one respect, they're completely represented. They're represented by not the 3 or 4 unions that don't negotiate well. They're represented directly by whoever gets the best deal. And then everybody jumps right up to that deal. Is that how that's proposed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That is, but again, it is only for the non-arbitration groups. The council actually has the ability to approve the package for that bargaining group. And this isn't a traditional bargaining year. This is actually going to a lesser healthcare plan, a significant change in healthcare plans. And because of that, we want to make sure that everybody is treated equally during that process. And it's going to be a difficult negotiating.
My concern is that everybody wouldn't be treated equally because if there's not the arbitration groups, how many other groups are there besides them? 4 others?
Yes.
6 total, so you take out those 2, so you got 4, and those 4 can all negotiate different things. But whichever one negotiates the best, that group and the unrepresented group all get the same thing. I just want to make sure I'm understanding that that's the way it's working. And it sounds like it is.
Mr. Mayor. Generally speaking, one of the things that you try to do is try to set the tone for the negotiations and bargaining. And we've traditionally done that with the non-representative group, which sends a message to the bargaining groups, this is what the city council is looking for. You can easily avoid the Me Too clause by simply waiting until you've negotiated with the unions before you come up with something for the non-representative group. But the idea is to try to get the ball rolling. So, in my way of thinking, this is how we've traditionally proceeded. I don't see anything wrong with that. If the council's concerned or doesn't want the non-representative group to go first, then I think we should just wait.
Abby, how does this proposal, the ones that they follow, all of the this proposal, for example, or ones that may be coming after it, in terms of wages and benefits, how does it compare with to comparable cities in our state?
As far as healthcare transition goes, we are behind the times. Other cities have already transitioned to new healthcare plans, and they have offered similar offsets or incentives to transition early. And that's why we're starting in 2016, so that we can be there with this group, not only, but also with the other groups before 2018. We don't want to wait until 2017 to negotiate a new healthcare plan. And so other cities have already done this. We are, I don't like saying we're behind the times, but we kind of are. And typically, CPI, 90% of CPI is traditionally how they would apply wages or a cost of living. So, anywhere between a 1% and a 3% is pretty reasonable.
Thank you.
Do you know how much an average employee, a union employee, pays in union dues?
It can range anywhere from probably the lowest amount would be, like for our seasonals, would be around $20 a month, or $20 a pay period, I should say, up to 2% of gross wages. So for example, in our management union, we have one group that in our management union pays $74 a pay period for their union dues. So it ranges.
I'd also add that there's probably a monthly membership fee as well to belong to any of the organized labor groups. I would actually favor Councilmember Collins' earlier comment that I would favor postponing this. And let's get these contracts brought in, and at that time would be the appropriate time to review the Me Too clause.
Just point of clarification, I actually supported the proposal as a way of moving. But if that's not the will of the council, then you certainly can wait. But
I do need to bring up one more item before we have probably further discussion. When we met in closed session, we took the direction from the council, the consensus that was unanimous, and we met with the non-represented group, and we discussed what the council provided, which included the Me Too clause at that time. So there was a meeting with the non-represented group to meet with them because we weren't bargaining with them. We needed to let them know that they would be transitioning to a new health care plan, and the paperwork needs to be filled out prior to the beginning of the year. We've also met with the bargaining groups and started negotiations with the other bargaining groups using the direction the council provided. So staff actually has gone forward with that direction from the council, and I just want you to be aware of where we are with that. And as Abby said, we have met with all the bargaining groups. With some of the bargaining groups, we've met multiple times, and we're not even close to coming to an agreement with any of the bargaining groups. And it's the hope that the other bargaining groups to transition to the new health care plan recognize that we are moving forward with the new health care plan. So again, that's where we are with negotiations, and we took the direction from the council and have been moving forward with it.
Can we read the ordinance? Ordinance of the City of Port Angeles, Washington, amending ordinance 3524 relating to salaries, wages, and benefits for the city's non-represented management and administrative personnel. Thank you. Okay, ordinance authorizing closure of existing debt service funds.
Mayor, members of the council, this is somewhat of a housekeeping measure where we are closing two funds that council had authorized to be open because of two factors. One, the 2005 General Obligation Bond Fund. The reason we're closing that, or proposing to close that, is as of November 1st, 2015, we had fully paid off all of the voter-approved bonds for building of the library, so therefore that fund is no longer needed. Now, we do anticipate, because there's excess property tax levies associated with that there may be revenues coming in over the next few years as those property taxes that may be delinquent finally get paid. All of those revenues that come in after the fact will be going into the 2005 limited tax bond issue, which is the Mitchell property. And you will recall that we have a $1 million balloon payment coming closer every year. It's actually 2021. The second fund to be closed is the 2005 limited tax bond issue for expansion of utilities into the western urban growth area. Recently, Council authorized the refinancing of that bond issue, so we're closing that one, and Council, by authorizing that refinancing, we created a 2015 one, so we're just swapping one for the other. The reason we want to close them before year end is that means that in 2016 we don't have to account and report on those as separate funds, so it makes our lives a little bit easier. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions? Okay, we read the ordinance. Ordinance to the City Council of the City of Port Angeles, Washington, closing bond funds no longer active. Okay, let's go to the Chamber of Commerce Visitor Center contract.
Mr. Mayor and Council, as directed by Council last month, staff was requested to move forward with negotiating a contract with the Chamber of Commerce for operation of the Visitor Center. A dollar amount was derived by Council as part of the lodging tax recommendations for 2016, dollar amount totaling $74,591, which is a $3,900 decrease from the year 2015. It's important for Council to be aware that we successfully negotiated all but one of the items that were discussed and requested by the Lodging Tax Committee as well as City Council. Those included demonstration of Visitor Center hours, which were incorporated specifically in the contract, and you'll see that the specific hours are listed in the new contract. They haven't been prior to this contract. Additionally, we did incorporate and negotiate in a section that provides with a mutually agreed upon additional or alternative location for location of the Visitor Center. If the Chamber was interested in looking for pursuing such a location, that is incorporated, as well as the production of a new map that was also discussed, and some measures to create some innovative approaches in the Visitor Center. The one item that we did not reach agreement on was a request from both the Lodging Tax Committee and Council that we reach resolution relative to the portangeles.org domain name, and that's still an issue that needs to be resolved. Staff has provided some options to you in your council memo. I would note that probably the preferred option would be recognizing that there's not a great deal of value to the City of Port Angeles for a .org name. The Vertigo marketing contract, which will be coming before you later this evening, did have a budget line item for purchase of a new domain name, and we certainly think that that could happen. But again, that's certainly something, because the Lodging Tax Committee and Council wish to have that happen. That's something that we wanted to bring to your attention this evening. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know President of the Chamber of Commerce, Jim Moran, is also present tonight, and we both be happy to answer any questions Council might have.
I have a question. What is the budget amount for Vertigo for domain name?
I believe it's probably approximately $3,000.
$3,000. Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
I had a question. Is this contingent on our resolving this domain name to give them the contract to go ahead with the Visitor Center? If they have the contract for the next year, they're offering the Visitor Center, they're using the domain name, don't we have some time to settle this? I'm just wondering if it has to be done now, or can we just let them go about their business and we can figure it out later?
That is certainly an option that we could essentially postpone that decision. Keep in mind that was an issue of discussion for the 2015 contract, and it was postponed and agreed that we would discuss it mid-year in 2015. We did discuss it in mid-year 15. We still haven't come to mutual agreement. I think there's certainly some different perspectives there relative to that domain name, but I think it's also important to factor in a couple things. One, how valuable is the .org domain name specifically? Are there other domain names out there that might be better and more applicable for Port Angeles to consider? But there's value too in the Chamber having a Port Angeles based domain name. It's important, from the city's perspective, we've invested a lot of money in that domain as well. Over the years, it's been lodging tax funding that has been provided to the Chamber of Commerce that has essentially supported the consistent use of that domain.
I completely agree with you. I was just kind of looking at that as separate issues because I didn't want to hold up the visitors that are doing their good work on our behalf. Okay, thank you.
I have a question of Mr. Fernand. Can you come to the podium? I would just note that as a contractor with numerous cities in the past, it's always understood that the rights of the materials that I produce are always the property of the city that I'm working for. So option number one is typical of what would be in a contract where that's the case. But my question to you, Mr. Moran, is does the Chamber favor option 2 as well?
The Chamber does favor option 2 without the last sentence.
Because you don't feel you have to pay back the city for the costs that we paid for?
No, because we have invested not only Chamber funds, but Chamber time and talent in developing this website. So just the pure financial aspect of it, we feel that we need to be reimbursed for that. And also, if we gave up the website, we would have to redevelop another one and that would be a cost and a burden on our part also. So we feel either we would maintain that website or we need to work out some sort of financial arrangement for us to be able to create a new one.
What are the historic costs associated with the domain name?
We figured out about $5,000, and I was surprised to hear the number $3,000 for Vertigo, because our research shows it's approximately more than that.
But the funds that we use to develop the domain name, were they city funds?
Were they city funds? They were lodging tax dollars. Now, here's the key, and I've done some research on this. In no contract prior to 2015 was there any language indicating that the city had any ownership of the specifically the domain name. My research also showed that the contract, the lodging tax dollars were provided to promote tourism, and whatever way the Chamber of Commerce deemed appropriate. And so the Chamber of Commerce applied for that domain name. And so by applying for the domain name, we feel that the ownership is really the Chamber's. And so the lodging tax dollars were not specifically in any contract prior to 2015 stated that the domain name would be part of the city's ownership. And so if you've seen PortAngeles.org, it does focus on the Chamber. There's a few parts of it that are tourism oriented, but about 3/5 of the domain is Chamber oriented, not city oriented or tourism oriented. It is I'm not a lawyer, I'm an accountant, but what I understand is it is a tangible asset, and it's not a tangible asset that you can pick up like a truck or something like that. But it's a tool that we use to promote tourism over the years, and there was no lodging tax dollars specifically earmarked from the city to buy and promote a website. Therefore, we feel that the ownership is the Chamber's because of our development, of the website. We use it as a tool. And I think what the example you're trying to say is if you contracted the chamber to, for example, build a ditch, and you gave us funds to build that ditch, and to do so, we went out and bought a shovel. And at the end of completion of the ditch, I think what you're contending is the shovel then belongs to you. And our contention is it belongs to us, because you never said to go out and buy a shovel with that money. You just said, go out and build a ditch, and that's what we did.
Well, I just want to say that I favor the chamber retaining the main name, and I think that the city and chamber need to negotiate what public dollars went into that and provided some figure. I don't know what that number would be. It seems to me to be a negotiation rather than just a reimbursement. So.
Mr. Bloor, option one. My question to you, with all of the previous discussions about this 3-year contract with Chamber, how can this be added without consent of Chamber? Again, option one. J2.
Excuse me, I did review the option.
Thank you.
Well, I think what the option is saying is that that would be a condition of a contract. We cannot unilaterally impose that. That is correct. I think that's what you're getting at. But it could be a condition of the contract, and so it would be up to the chamber to decide whether they wanted to have a contract. Would that include it or not have a contract?
When this RFP was put forward for bids, I've been told that we've had the proper response. So would we be breaking our RFP process by trying to add this additional language at the last minute?
If we chose option one specifically?
Yes.
No, I don't think so. The RFP process was for somebody who would operate the visitor center. If it happened, and I think we would require, in any contract that we do now, we would require language, and in the past we have had language, that any of the products, writings and things like that, that are produced using the lodging tax funds belong to the city, even though somebody else produced them. They're produced by city funds. They're produced by somebody using city funds, and it is very common, as Council Member Collins said, that those products belong to the city. And so, I'm sorry.
I'm fully in support. I do believe that we are the money that invested with the chamber for this domain name requirement. After all, they have been the only game in town that's received their lodging tax funds for quite some time. I can't even go back and tell you the amount of years, but again, they're the only one that I know that have received the funding from our lodging tax funds. This leads me back to the entire RFP process, where I had concerns initially with the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, how their plan is implemented and put forward to council and to an RFP process. My concerns again is because of the location beside the ferry dock. I've heard it be called the $1 million corner, but I'd like to say that all those folks getting off the ferry, I'd probably say 90% of them, plus the others on Highway 101, are going to go on Highway 101. So I'm not convinced that that's the best place to put our visitor center. There's been no proposal from Lodging Tax Advisory. I've heard no other location suggested. Frankly, to see that the chamber thinks that their $18,500 requested price for a domain name that we really steered them into producing. Hey, I'm all about business, but I don't think in this case that should be the case. I won't be able to support any of this because, again, we're not addressing another location.
Question. So if we bought a domain that says portangeloschamber.org, and transferred your webpage to it, would that satisfy you guys?
I'm not sure that's available, because we looked into
Port Angeles Chamber?
portangeloschamber.org. If it is, I'm not, as I said, I'm an accountant, I'm not a technician, I don't know the mechanics of that. If it were possible, I'm sure we would be agreeable to that. We're facing, what's the word they use to take down dams? Decommissioning, if you will, the website, and then rebuilding another one.
So it actually would be perfect timing if we, as an exchange, because I guess what bothers me here is that this domain name has been and continues to be paid with city lodging tax funds. So, had we not paid for it, then you guys wouldn't have it. So, but it's part of, doing your due diligence. But I'm wondering, because a domain name isn't that expensive. So, especially since you're having to redo your webpage.
Well, we don't currently have to redo it. We would have to redo it if we gave up portangelos.org.
Well, what I'm saying is that, since, and I said, because a web page is just a set of files that are very easily transferred, I'm wondering if this is something that, looking into what it would take to just transfer your whole page over, with portangeloschamber.org. And then you guys have that one, and then we get the other one back. That could be just negotiated.
We don't know that's available, so at this point.
So, Council, there are other domains available. In fact, the Chamber does own other domain. That certainly would be an option. I do think it's important to point out, just relative to the long-term contractual aspect, the difference is these are lodging tax dollars. So it's important to remember with lodging tax dollars, we actually have to see an invoice to pay on. So we actually have invoices that say we are actually paying for a domain, which is very different than approach where we're not paying the actual invoice. Do I want to go back and trace invoices back to 1996? I really don't, and I don't think it's a good use of staff time. And in fact, I'd much rather move down the road of obtaining a better .com domain through what has been offered in the proposal for Vertigo marketing and move forward with that. I think that would be the more efficient approach for the city. But at the same time, I want to respect the Council of Lodging Tax Committee's ask to make sure that the domain name is satisfactorily resolved.
So would it be portangelos.com? Is that what the new domain would be?
I would prefer not to speculate as to what the new name would be because I don't want to see the price shoot up overnight as to what that might be or someone buy it based on hearing it tonight. But there definitely are some out there that would be very positive domains and they would be .coms.
Just a personal comment. I think your new marketing agency would probably feel more comfortable developing their own domain and strategy that way. All we want to do is just keep the site as is, and it would cause us less problems of redeveloping and such. If it wasn't absolutely necessary for you to have the domain name for your marketing piece, I don't see right now we're trying to crush ants with a sledgehammer, and I think we need to move on with that.
I'd like to move that we, since we're all agreeing on option 2, that we settle contract with option 2. Second.
Are you including that last sentence?
I believe we
have
have the last sentence. It's not so onerous. It says we're going to request that. That means that the chamber is going to have to decide how they're going to handle that. I agree with Mr. West that we don't want to go back and try to go through all the invoices, but maybe there's a reasonable amount of money that could be reimbursed, and then the chamber can feel comfortable with it. That's their domain without having victimized the public's dollars.
The,
Just a minute, Dan. Did we get a second on that motion? Yeah.
Didn't get a second on
I would second it for
so if we did insist that we get that domain name back, ordanances.org, then what are we going to do with it? Well, it'll sit on a shelf because we won't get a line item to develop a better domain name, the .com, through our new marketing company. So that part doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. But what it would also do is pose a tremendous burden 30 days before chamber contract starts for the visitor center. And I don't know if any of you guys have actually changed domain names and stuff. I've done that a couple times. It is a very onerous situation. It takes months to get the kinks worked out. After you develop a name and find out that it's available and affordable and you purchase it, it's something that I think would be completely unfair to throw on the chamber 30 days before they start their contract.
I totally agree with Councilmember Gaines. I favor option number 3 because I'm just not going to throw a monkey wrench in the works right now. I just think December 1st, we're telling you that your successful domain name that has received so many hits that is the chamber's utilizing to full extent and more successful every year, all of a sudden take that away and leave you in more time.
You misunderstand option 3. Option 3 is that we're going to purchase the domain name from them. We don't want to do that.
Right, with a counter offer. Oh, okay. Well, then, all right.
Option 2 without that last sentence
Option 2
really
without
accomplishes.
the last sentence, okay.
We would certainly be agreeable to option 2 without the last sentence.
Okay, I'm trying to grasp what the best way.
Been a long night, I know.
It's been a long night.
So I'm a little confused. Nathan, what is the staff's recommendation?
Again, I think staff would probably recommend option 2. I don't believe there's a lot of value in the .org name, and I don't think it would make a lot of sense to make a large investment in moving forward with a purchase of .org. I certainly think number 1 is a reasonable option, but I also understand that the chamber is not satisfied with option 1.
So does that mean that the fact that we have paid and continue to pay for this domain, that those public funds are lost to the public? Because they...
No, they wouldn't be, because it'd still be an active website being used by the chamber, which is being paid for by lodging taxes. It would just continue like it has for 15 years.
I disagree that I believe it would be a gift of public funds if we just let them use it after it was paid for by public funds. That's why I think we need to keep that sentence in there. And I think the chamber needs to realize that they need to negotiate something in order to obtain it. Even if we sell it to them for $1, you know how quick claim deeds go, Councilman. I mean, there needs to be some reimbursement of the public dollar in order, we can't just gift it to them.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
I just think it doesn't need to be an unreasonable
I
amount
think it
of money.
needs to be a minimal amount because we are reaping the tax benefits from the chamber using that. We had record tourism this year. They're marketing Port Angeles. They're bringing in new residents as well as tourists. So they're working on our behalf with that domain. So I would think a minimum amount would be reasonable.
I guess, like I said, I'm still not clear because we paid them to have this website. We paid for the marketing for, right? And so that was part of the website. And so now they're no longer going to do the website, we have somebody else doing the website. So this website that was put together with our funds for both purposes, both the chamber purposes and the marketing purposes, correct? Am I correct in this?
Right.
So, I guess like I said, I'm just trying to clarify in my head. So part of it was used for the city's purpose and part of it is used for the private organization's purpose. So how much then, the fact that we've been paying for this domain since its inception, is this, again, I just want to clarify, is it a gift? Would it be a gift? Or I know that we are still going to be paying them to do the visitor center, but that has, I don't know if that has stuff to do with the webpage or not.
Let me try to maybe bring a little clarity and a little different approach. The domain name, you buy it, you purchase it, you pay for it, what, annually? Is there a pre-price?
Much annually, yeah.
So the reason you pay for it annually is because you use it that year, you pay for that year. Then you pay for the next year, and you pay for that year. So the chamber has purchased the domain name, they use it that year, paid for that year, and then they have to use it the next year. So if we're no longer paying for we got the benefit for the marketing services for that year that they purchased the domain name. So we're not going to pay for it in the future when we're no longer receiving a benefit for it. So now, if we're going to what may be a better domain name with a .com, I don't believe, and I would defer to the city attorney, but I don't believe that would be gifting public funds because they retain the domain name. Because again, it's a yearly purchase for the use of it that year, and some people give up their domain name because they no longer use it. So again, that's another way to look at it. I would defer to Bill, see what his thoughts are on that, but that might be a way to look at that and understand the value for that year that you paid for, but we would no longer be purchasing that domain name because we don't have any use for it.
So to tag on to that, if I can ask Mr. Moran, is the intention of the chamber/visitor center to cancel their website? My understanding is that you're going to still keep the .org going, keep the website up.
Yeah, and if you look at the website,
So we will always get benefit from that.
it mostly is a chamber-oriented website. Very little of it is really marketing. But in our opinion, again, I'm not an attorney. I would defer to legal counsel on this, but the research I've done and the advice I've gotten is this would not be considered a gift by the city at all.
But the public has gotten the benefit
They have.
each year as they paid for it, and now they won't get benefit from it, but they're not paying for it anymore either.
That's correct. That's why we don't consider, we would not, with all due respect to the council and council, we do not consider it would be a gift because of the benefit that the city has derived from it. In other words, you've gotten your money's worth out of this. And so,
We have that value. So for this new webpage, or the new website, is the bill for maintaining that website going to be the same? I would suspect so, right? One website versus another website?
Well, I don't want to mix up a bill for maintaining a website with ownership of a domain name. They're two entirely separate things, but the cost would be the same. As far as if we were continuing to pay to maintain the domain name portangeles.org, the new one, the cost would likely be the same into the future.
Okay, that's what I was
So in light of all that, I'd like to make a new motion that we...
There's a motion to deal with motions.
Oh, that's right, that's second. Okay.
I think we repeat this.
Would you repeat the motion? I have forgotten it.
Yes, the motion is to agree with staff and go with option 2.
All right, the motion on the floor is to go with option 2, to approve the contract with option 2. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
no.
No,
Motion passes 5-2. All right.
I wanted option 2 without the last sentence.
But we can minimize it. It can be minimal.
All right, let's go to the professional services contract for Vertigo marketing.
Mr. Mayor, council, as directed, we did move forward with negotiation of a marketing contract
Just
with...
a point of clarification, did we deal with H1?
We didn't. We skipped.
No, we did not, but we can go to that one last, and I was going to bring that up.
Okay. I just I thought I missed something here. I closed it off.
Okay, right, I just-
Although Abby is here.
All right, let's stay on track here, so we'll get on here sometime tonight. Let's go ahead and deal with this issue. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor and Council, as directed, we did move forward with negotiating a contract with Vertigo Marketing. Again, there was a detailed RFP process that was issued by the city. 6 responses were received. The finalists were interviewed by the Lodging Tax Committee, and Vertigo came out ahead as far as those marketing proposals that came in. I would note that all the details in the proposal were negotiated into the contract. The dollar amount meets the City Council approved budget from the Lodging Tax Committee that was approved at the last council meeting. The budget is just under the $200,000 budget. It comes in at approximately $199,000 for the overall proposal. We have ensured that throughout the scope of work that there are substantial deliverables that we hope council will agree are very solid measurables and products that we'll actually receive from Vertigo Marketing. It's also important to mention that Vertigo has also secured relationships with 5 different local professionals to be involved in that process, as well as another local individual from Revitalize Port Angeles who's volunteering for that effort. This contract is something that the city's very excited to be moving forward with, and it's something that should be an opportunity to try some new and different things, and it's something that we'll be informing you about on a regular basis in the upcoming future council meetings.
Okay, questions, comments?
Just, right, so this is going to go all the way till December 31st of 2017. Right? Okay.
I believe that would be December 31st of 2016.
Okay, so, oh, this is, okay, because first it's 285, and you have the option to extend. Okay.
Correct.
Sorry, I was getting confused with the other one that we wanted to be shorter. So this was just for 1 year.
It's for tourism marketing for 2016.
Go ahead.
When council took this item up 2 to 4 weeks ago, we talked about having some infrastructure developed from this lodging tax fund in support of tourism. And $200,000 is a substantial amount for something that we're not going to have anything to show for at the end of the 1-year period. We're going to get pushed electronically. We're going to have some folks here that actually come up with some working hours out of this contract, but we have friends that come over from Victoria, and one of my friends in particular loves the art that we have downtown. And to go around downtown, they've got a comment about it's different from Victoria. Maybe that's what's going to set us apart from a city of the size of Victoria, but you know, they enjoy coming here and looking at our art. And I guess I push back and say, guess what? There might be people out there that want to come and visit us for our art scene. So $200,000 is too large of an amount. I spoke again about this last time. I just want to get my words on record that I will not be supporting this.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the professional services agreement with Vertigo Marketing and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement and to make minor modifications as necessary.
Second.
Move second. Further discussion?
Yes, I have got to agree with Lee on this one. Art actually is one of the best marketing and best, economic development things that as a city we do. I too think that 200,000 is too much, but I know that that was the RFP. This is not, for the whole thing that we had set. But I really don't like the idea of spending that much money on marketing. We get more marketing for free for outside orientalists and things like that. Marketing is one hope that there's more things to measure here. I know that you guys have worked hard on it. I appreciate that. And I know council agreed that we would do this. And I didn't vote for that. I didn't support that because I think it's too much money. But I appreciate at least that the contract is good. I think we're going to get something a little bit better. I just wish it was something more permanent, something that could build on itself. So this is luckily just for 1 year, and I hope that in the future, the next one is for less money for marketing and then therefore more money for capital. I would like the next one to have some capital projects in it for the RFP.
And that would be a good suggestion to take to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, so as they look at programs for next year, they can focus on capital recommendations as opposed to some of the other groups that they have.
Thanks.
I know I've said this before, but I wanted to feel the need to say it again, given the lack of support from the state for marketing in our area, given our location, given the huge competitive challenges that this region of our area faces, and given the budgets from other states and other marketing programs in our region, I just welcome this effort. And this, I had the opportunity to reread the Vertigo proposal, knowing their success in Bend, Oregon, given the numbers that they've increased tourism in their region. Bend has become a very favored location. If they even come very close to what the program has been presented down in that area, and if it can be comparable here, we're going to just see some numbers that our lodging dollars are going to go up and beautiful. And I'm just very impressed with the program, pleased that they've come in partnership with us tonight. This last thing, I was just hoping that the Chamber of Commerce efforts have confidence they will be good. And Vertigo does well with their marketing, the collaborative nature of those two. We'll see some really great results this year. And I really caution us to be intimidated by the number. It needs to be that number just for us to be in the game. It's a fact.
I think this is an outstanding opportunity for Port Angeles to take our marketing to a higher level. This is an investment, and our investing so the taxpayers will be higher tourism taxes. So I'm expecting, it's an excellent proposal, and I know Ryan Mullane has worked with them also, with Mr. West, and I think this is really exciting. And in fact, if we had, for instance, had half the amount, we wouldn't get the quality of people bidding on the RFP. We're barely in the ball game at the amount we are, but now I think we've got a foot in the door. I'm excited to see what this investment do for us, so I think it's a great opportunity.
I'd also like to add, from a different perspective, that there are many small and medium-sized businesses in Port Angeles that spend more than $200,000 a year on their marketing and advertising. I can speak personally for that, and I know a lot of other business owners that far exceed this number. And for us as a city not to even come in with a minimum ante for such an impressive package, I would say would speak volumes against us.
So I would like to just add that the 200,000 would give us at least 20 girls on the city. And I would rather spend that 200,000 on the United Way over marketing, because we won't know. We're going to have this new, we just got that, outside Peninsula, West City. We will probably get a lot of new tourism. We won't know if it's because of that or because of this new effort. And so anyway, that's interesting.
I just wanted to respond to that. Looking over the contract that I read here in our packet, there are measurables that can help us to see where it's coming from, who they are. I'm comfortable with that part of the contract.
Mayor, members of the council, if I could just clarify one thing, that Councilmember Brooks suggested that the funding, rather than spending on the marketing, could be spent on health and human services. State law limits that this money can only be spent in the promotion of tourism and related activities, which include capital projects, so long as the capital project is owned by the city of Port Angeles. So it couldn't be used for programming in other areas, except in support of those programs bringing in tourism.
Right, sorry. Then we can do the murals on all city buildings.
If we own the building.
Art, there you go, art. Art would do it.
Yes.
That would bring it.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes, thank you.
Ladies and
I
gentlemen,
did
can I
skip
say
over-
one thing? I'm sorry, I know I'm out of order.
Yes, you are.
There will be a public comment time in just a moment.
There's a second part of the contract.
Okay, what else? What else?
Hold it.
Hold that thought.
I did overlook a resolution to authorize the enrollment in the AWC Retrospective Rating Program. That's why I had to change, right? I forgot about that, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, this might be the first time I've ever had two things on the agenda. Tonight, I am making a recommendation to have the city council approve the resolution to enroll the city, to authorize enrollment in the Association of Washington City's Retrospective Rating Program. So currently, the city is self-insured, and we have been since 1980. Over this last year, actually back into 2014, we began looking into the benefits, the pros and cons of becoming part of the state fund for labor and industries, for workman's comp claims. And what we have found is that the benefits definitely outweigh what we are dealing with right now with, unfortunately, some poor customer service or quality of service or lack of performance with our third-party administrator. So that's what prompted us really to look into the AWC Retro program. And just a few of the benefits for the Retro program is one that it will be state funded. So that means that as of January 2016, all of our new claims for workman's comp would go through the state fund, would be administered by the Association of Washington Cities. We expect them to give a high a quality of service, a better performance than what we have with our current third-party administrator. Another thing is with the state L&I fund, we could partake in the return to work program, which also for that, if any of you are familiar with it, they will reimburse the city up to $10,000 for anybody who returns to work. So, however, when we surrender our self-insurance to switch to the state fund, we still need to maintain self-insurance for our current open claims. Right now, the city has about 20 claims. So what that means is we need to work on moving those claims to closure, to state second L&I or second injury fund or pension or whatever we need to do to move those claims. So we still need to maintain a budget for those 20 open claims. So what we're proposing is that effective January 2016, we become a member of the AWC Retro program, the state fund, and maintain self-insurance until those claims are closed. What the city needs to do to actually surrender the self-insurance and be released of all liability for our current claims, open claims, is to report 4 quarters of $0 to the state. One of the other things that we found is that our city is actually fairly small to be self-insured. Typically, we budget about $300,000 to $400,000 a year for our self-insurance claims, and really, to be self-insured, you need to start at about $650 and above to even, be in the ballpark of being able to self-insure for our claims. We understand there will be upfront costs, but long-term benefits. So tonight, we are proposing, recommending, that you do approve the resolution to allow us to enroll in the program.
Okay, let me read the resolution first. The resolution of the City Council of the City of Port Angeles, Washington, authorizing enrollment in the Association of Washington City's Retrospective Rating Program.
I just want to support the staff's position here. I think that our system is very effective and very efficient, and I think
sustainability of our system, and this is the way to go. So, Henry, again, on budget constraints, given all of our comments about being pressed for money and so forth, this is a larger budget item than what it had otherwise. $17,000 and $18,000, whatever that number. So, but looking at it from a value perspective, I'm impressed that you're recommending an increase in our budget.
Well,
It must be because you did that.
And Byron might be able to speak to more of this, but we do have reserves that we'll use for the first few years. So our goal will be to get these claims closed within the next year or two. And so funding it, we will need to use reserves. But part of the AWC program is that we can also be eligible for a refund every year based on the pool's experience rating. You know, we can't, it's not guaranteed. But just the trends of our claims over the last 3 years, you know, the AWC has proposed that we would like to get a refund, which we would put back into reserve. So it will take, you know, a good 2 to 4 years to get back to where we're not spending, you know, extra.
Madam Members of the Council, maybe I could add just a few things here. What we don't see directly in the self-insurance fund for workers' comp are the costs carried by the individual departments that are paying not only for the injured worker and those costs, but also then paying because in many areas, especially police and fire, we have to cover that duty shift. So we're typically paying an employee overtime to cover that shift. What we will see going forward is those costs borne by the department will now be shifted to L&I, producing what will really be a savings within the department, because we're not paying for the time for the injured worker. We will be paying for the overtime costs to cover the shifts. Secondly, as Abby mentioned, with the size of the pool, the city doesn't have enough money, and the way it is currently structured, we are self-insured not on a citywide basis, but on a department-wide basis. So police has to absorb all the costs within police, fire does all within fire, and the various public works funds, water, electric, and such, bear within those. So it makes it very difficult for that. And I know there have been some concerns by some council members regarding that sometimes you don't always win, so to speak, with the retrospective rating programs, and sometimes you have to pay a premium surcharge. Our plan would be to put the first 3 to 4 years of any surplus payment back to the city into the workers' comp reserve, which will then, once it gets to a certain level, probably at least 2 to 3 times what our maximum surcharge would be, then we could start to return any of those savings back on a prorated basis to the departments. But before we get to that point, those reserves would build up to protect us in case we had an adverse year.
Gary, it's important to point out, it's not about the refund, but it's about better claims management is the goal. Okay, you have a resolution?
Mr. Mayor, I recommend this City Council approve the resolution to authorize enrollment in the AWC Retrospective Rating Program.
Second. Move second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, your council reports. Start with Councilman Gase.
No report.
Mr. Widow.
I'd just like to thank our city first responders. 2 weeks ago, I drove by an accident on the way here to city council, and on the way back, then the same accident had turned into a large amount of tree falling on West 8th, or I think it was West 8th, might have been Cherry Street as well. So again, thank our first responders and our city people in general. Thanks.
I had the opportunity to bring a member of the family downtown to the West End Park over the holiday weekend, and visited with a number of people who were out of town themselves as we walked along the Discovery Trail through the park. I want to thank recognize Nathan West and others in his department and brought this matter forward. The park was highly complimented. I know that Nathan has worked extraordinarily hard, frustrated on a number of occasions. But Nathan, you need to know that everybody I talked to, including my own flesh and blood, really, really likes what we did. Congratulations.
Pat, thank you, and I appreciate the kind compliments. I think it's very important to say that council truly should be thanked for it, and but also really recognizing all the departments who had involvement, and in particular Public Works and Utilities, who did an excellent job overseeing the construction of the project.
Okay.
I just think tonight's meeting has been amazing. We had half the town here, and we've had figures and discussions, and this is democracy in action.
Also speak for the town.
Actually, I've got a bunch of things here. One, I attended the opiate summit that happened today, and the Port Angeles Police was highly talked about over and over about their successful use of the naloxone, anyway, and they've been asked if they could possibly share their knowledge with other organizations, as well as tribal police, and we're talking tribal police like EMA and the Quileutes and Forks and things like that. So that was it was a really interesting summit. It was very depressing to know that the numbers for heroin use are going very high. And so, I agree. The second thing is I asked Nathan if he could fill out the survey for the smart cities, and so hopefully we will get folks here to help us think what it is to make smarter. So I'm not sure exactly what that means, but we will find out. The third thing was I was actually finally cleaning my big, huge pile of papers, and I'm a little embarrassed. It was took me forever. I had been sent policies from Hawaii on how to deal with vacant buildings in the downtown. So I will get them to you hopefully before the next meeting, and to see whether we can review them to see if this is a policy we can use to make sure that our empty buildings downtown can actually move in a positive direction. And my last item is we have a new health director at the Alma Clinic, and she comes from Spokane. And she was telling me about a process that Spokane did to best work with their tribes, because there's a couple of tribes that are near there. And they did this workshop on privilege, actually, trying to understand our different positions. And so I was actually kind of curious about this, and she said it was a workshop. It started with the leaders that had worked into the lay community and then into kind of the schools, and understanding, because I know that I work for the tribe, and I do know that our kids currently, or the kids in the tribe to this day, are getting bullied. So there's still some of that animosity. And I know with 2 weeks there was a lot of animosity because of the jobs lost. And so this might be a way of healing some of that, understanding at least where things come from. So like I said, Spokane did it. I'll bring a little bit more information about that to council to see if we would consider maybe possibly doing something like this to help the communication with the tribe. So that's it.
Despite my being out of town for so long, I did meet with Bill Greenwood. He gave me a copy of the year-end report for EDC. I'll make sure the council members have it in their box if you haven't received it already. I think they feel that 2015 has been a great year for them posturing how they're moving ahead. Structured as more of a private organization rather than a public organization. But they still need to have the city's support as part of their outreach to private business, and so we'll need to work on that.
Okay. Anything else? I just briefly mentioned 2 activities. A couple of weeks ago, I did go to the fire department and meet with the firemen and during the shift change to convey to them the council's happiness with the happiness, not the right word, with the council's congratulations for the teamwork that was required in order to allow for the members of the department to go to the Eastern Washington Fight Fires this summer. They were very appreciative of that. And so I want you to know that we did do that. And then tomorrow I'll be attending the League of Women's Voters meeting at 1 o'clock, isn't it?
Actually, maybe the message didn't reach you. It has been canceled and it will be in
I
January.
guess I won't be there tomorrow. Hey, the purpose of my visit would have been to express our appreciation for the assistance that you gave the council during the fluoride meetings that we held. So I will try to find out when the next meeting is to come
I'll
and
make sure.
convey our appreciation for that. Thank you. That's it. All right, we are at city manager report.
We have one report and 1 minute in your packet, and you can, if you have any questions, you go to the appropriate staff, and they'll be glad to answer them. From tonight's meeting, I have a couple action items. One is that we will work with the council on a facilities ad hoc, or facility maintenance ad hoc committee. As you recall, we did disband the Parks and Rec subcommittee, but it sounds like we want to restore an ad hoc committee for that specific purpose. And so we'll work with the mayor on that. And the other item is that we will pass on City Manager Williams' thank you to the appropriate staff. Last, we do have city action days coming up. For those council members that have been there before, that really is a AWC Legislative Conference in Olympia. That will be January 27th and 28th. And typically 3 council members go to that. And the purpose of it is to learn about state legislative issues that affect the city, the current issues, as well as hear from some of the key state legislators regarding the state budget and those legislative issues. And it's a very good conference. So we need to find out if there are 3 interested council members that would like to go to that. I see 3.5 hands.
We have 4 interested, I think you have to draw numbers, draw names for that.
So we have 3 members, so we'll make sure you get the information. And also just a reminder, we do have one of our staff members that is on the AWC Legislative Committee, and that is our Chief Financial Officer. And Byron has been appointed to that committee, and so it should be a good conference. And we'll make sure again the 3 of you get that information. And that's all I have.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize. There was one other thing that would be extremely helpful for clarification to staff relative to item J1 and the Chamber of Commerce Visitor Center contract. It would help greatly to clarify that, as I understand the motion as passed, included that last sentence of option 2. With that regard, it is really helpful to staff to know and verify that authority would be, it would be satisfactory to do that under the city manager's authority, recognizing that the chamber needs to move forward with their commitments for 2016, particularly that we only have 1 meeting left in the year, and I know that they need to make some decisions very soon. So it would be very helpful to staff to have the city manager with the delegated authority to make that final negotiation relative to that sentence.
Okay, Jerry.
I agree, because we don't want to inhibit the work we need them to do.
Let's get a motion so we get it over with.
I would make the motion. I would make the motion to give the city manager the authority to do that. I think I would add to it that I think it was the council's consensus that we just need to recover enough local funds to assure the auditors that it's not a gift of public funds.
A second.
Okay, it's been moved second.
Well, I made the second originally.
Okay.
I'm for it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Public comment?
Oh, I just want to say that just as we
Somebody has to vote.
It's all about process.
She's Canadian.
Name and address, please.
Hey, Kathy Kraut, kind of just new, we're 1826 South West 4th Street.
And as far as getting back to what you had mentioned, just as far as your financial situation, as far as advertising for the Port Angeles versus putting monies in artwork and such, you don't have to worry about the city. We were just passing through, literally just passing through, going to Vancouver Island, and we didn't know anything about Port Angeles. We were just going to go onto the ferry, going on to Vancouver, going up to Vancouver Island on vacation from Fresno, California. And we saw this little town, Port Angeles, didn't know anything about it. And there was just something about it that just kind of attracted us to it. And we were waiting for the ferry, and it just was a beautiful little town. God had provided it with a mountain, it had provided it with a strait, and it was beautiful. And so we said, we're going to kind of look around when we came back from Vancouver Island. And we started to look around, and we noticed the artwork. Yes, the artwork was beautiful. And we had not read a single article, we had not looked at a single piece of advertising. We made an appointment with the realtors, and we bought a house. And then we started to look at portangeles.org and started to then read about it. But we didn't need a single piece of advertising or anything like that to then realize that, yes, we've got a real treasure trove here. If you build it, yes, I suppose they'll come. No doubt you need advertising to bring it, but God has provided you all the magnificence that you need right here. But you've got a real jewel here. You've got a real jewel. So put your money. Maybe you need to put your money where your mouth is, but believe me, God has provided. The artwork, it's right here. It's right here. So take that where you need to put it. But we didn't need anything. We just kind of just came along, and it was already here. So take that where you need to put it, folks. But it's here.
Well, Mr. Moran and I would agree, you picked a really great neighborhood. Thank you.
Let's go home. Let's go home.
Any other public comment?
I can tell you one little story, council, you might be interested in, because we have seen so much publicity lately in respect to crime in this area. But last week, we had a gentleman park his car downtown and leave for Victoria on the ferry. And he left with his car running, unlocked, keys in it. And 2 days later, it was still there when the police department found it. Almost out of gas.
Wow.
2 days. Confiscated his keys, he came to the police department, he tried to give us a reward that we declined. But apparently the car theft issue at least is not as bad as we think.
Okay, well, thank you all. It's been a long night, and we are here right at 10